Chapter 111, The Arrival of the Storm. The carriages on the road progresses slowly. Suddenly, a thunderbolt strikes across the sky. Then, dark clouds start to gather and the sky darkens. A moment later, rain starts to fall. A storm in the summer occurs rapidly and departs rapidly as well. Just a moment ago, it was still a light drizzle, but now, it is already pouring heavily. The raindrops strike on the roof of the carriage, making a tack-tack melody. The view outside the carriage turns blurry and the appearance of the dark clouds and the heavy downpour plunges the day into night. Summer has just arrived and yet it is the third consecutive day that is raining this week. Recently, the rain has been falling quite frequently. It seems that Darso's luck is incredibly bad. Judging from the low-lying and heavy dark clouds, this rain probably won't be stopping anytime soon. The enthronement ceremony would be directly affected. After all, it isn't suitable to conduct a ceremony in such a rainy day. Could it be that they didn't prepare in advance? But, the court mages aren't the type to claim their salaries without working. In this world of magic, even though there are many shortcomings to it, there are also many aspects of it which surpasses the technological world. For example, the prediction and control of the weather. Old veteran hunters and rangers are able to predict the weather just by looking at the shape of the clouds. Druids who are close with nature are also able to smell the scent of a natural disaster from the wind. Mages are also able to use large-scale magic to control and choose the weather they want. Before heading out today, I went to look for crows to ask her about the weather. I still remember how she replied me with hesitation on her face. It should be sunny. However, my predictions have been erring recently. I have sensed clearly that it should have been sunny this whole week and yet it has been raining non-stop. I also don't feel the interference of anyone else. So, either my predictions are inaccurate or the ones interfering are much stronger than me. It is still understandable for other people to predict the weather inaccurately. However, Crows is a great druid who specializes in summoning storms. For her to predict the weather wrongly is just as incredulous as a fire mage burning himself in the midst of cooking. On other days, it is still fine for the weather to be bad. But when there is a group of sea folks living just by the river, the bad weather can prove to be lethal. It has been raining heavily for consecutive days, causing the regions flooded by the river water to expand significantly, increasing the area of movement for the sea folks. Furthermore, humans would be inconvenienced by the rainy day, whereas sea folks, adapted to fighting in water, would have their fighting prowess increased significantly. Thus, every time it rains, the atmosphere among the garrison troop along the coast of the river would become very tense as they stand on alert in case of an enemy invasion. Fortunately, from the looks of it, the sea folks still do not intend on making use of the rainy day to conduct an attack. The mages of the All-Land Empire aren't trash. There is no way they would allow the predetermined memorial be interrupted by a rainy day. If so, there can only be one explanation: the recent downpour isn't a natural phenomenon. Furthermore, the one interfering in the weather possesses power far superior to the All-Land court mages. Normally, a powerful existence like that wouldn't be bothered with something minor like that. For him to exert so much energy to change the weather, there must be something he hopes to gain out of this. The carriage suddenly stops and changes its direction, leaving me a little surprised. It can't be that Darsos would change his predetermined plan just because of a rainy day. Why did we change directions? Where are we going now? Are we returning back? Hearing my suspicions, the White Wolf Knight leading the team immediately explains. We have a contingency plan for the enthronement ceremony if it were to rain on the day itself. In order to deal with the storms, we have prepared two locations. One of them is the open field, whereas the other is the royal family sparring field. The sparring field has been sealed to create an indoor hall. If other people were to hear his reply, they would most probably be impressed by the All-Land royalty's preparedness. However, from his words, I could sense the helplessness and feebleness of a certain emperor. Without doubt, being inaugurated under the spectate and blessings of the citizens of the country while celebrating the event together with them is the ideal choice to earn their support. However, now that the enthronement ceremony has to be held in an indoor location, it could only mean that they have lost some control over the situation. The road to the royal family sparring field isn't easy to tread on. Other than the looks of dissatisfaction of the crowd along the way, the horses that come from all directions created a blockade. Now, when two carriages were to cross path, The one to give way isn't determined by their social position but the level of ranking of the guests in the carriage. It seems that as a princess of a small country, I am not that important compared to the others. Also, spectating the ceremony in my capacity as an individual also means that I am not part of the envoy team who would be joining in the alliance, so there is no need for me to arrive in advance at the ceremony. In the end, we got jammed, not to mention the fact that we still have to give way to others. Just like that, a 20-minute journey took nearly an hour. When we finally arrived our destination, the flow of human and carriages which far exceeds the capacity had the sparring field completely jammed. There isn't any location by the sparring field for the carriage to stop at. Helpless, we can only lift our skirts and tread on the muddy water, causing our feet to be smeared with mud, resulting in a buildup of frustration and anger. The only thing that is gladdening about the situation is the performance of the female official who tagged along, Rosemary. She is one of my masterpieces in recent times. Other than the royal knights who keep sneaking peeks at her, the young males who keep walking into walls, through their actions, proved Rosemary's charm. An exquisite and enchanting oval face with a slim waist. Her curvaceous body fully displays the charm of a mature woman. Despite so, innocence is reflected in her clear eyes. Her short golden hair is combed into a cute small ponytail. The masculine gesture now and then makes her seem youthful and lively, adding a cute tone to her atmosphere. The contradictions in her beauty gave her a complicated disposition. In the gazes of the males, her actions and her speech causes constant changes in her disposition. Sometimes, she seems like a 28-year-old lady and sometimes an 18-year-old girl. Sometimes, she seems pure and adolescent and sometimes elegant and seductive. It seems as though every man can find their dream girl within her. Arthenia, the true name of the goddess of beauty, is mentioned time and time again. In the eyes of the crowd, this level of beauty is beyond what mortals could reach. Compared to a true flower, a fake plastic one carved carefully looks even more exquisite and perfect. As a masterpiece which I meticulously carved by incorporating the strengths of countless different beauty, Rosemary is definitely the most beautiful woman I have ever met. Natural creations are an accumulation of chance and accidents. While accidents can bring one surprise, these surprises often carry some kind of flaw along with it. Rosemary's perfect beauty is indeed not something a mortal can possess. That beautiful face is created by through matching the most beautiful features of numerous faces to achieve a harmony between all of them, resulting in a perfect creation. He is indeed a fake flower, but he is a perfect flower who suppresses the beauty of other flowers, a terminal creation unable to be created by natural selection. Ayo, at this point, why did I remember a certain country's prided plastic surgery industry? It is said that their idols do not debut if they do not fix their faces. Many of them look totally different from their children, causing quite a controversy. Back to the topic at hand. Initially, I only wanted to make a woman capable of charming Darsos as a vengeance against him. However, as a necromancer who is responsible for his own creations, when I set my heart into it, my world destruction level talent started working its wonders once more. The result of my pursuit for perfection is that I have overdid it once again. Arthenia? I think she is more like Pandora. There probably isn't a single man who is capable to rejecting a request from a woman like this. She is truly a troublemaker. However, that bunch of gentlemen actually totally ignore Rosemary's beauty. Indeed, the sense of aesthetics for gentlemen are different from the masses. In my eyes, beauties are always a source of trouble, while supreme beauties like this are an endless source of great trouble. Innumerable legends, myths and historical events has also proven my point of view. However, when I realized that I have went overboard once again, creating a calamity level perfectly beautiful woman, I had no hesitation whatsoever in keeping him in Allland. Anyway, his phylactery is in my hand, so I do not fear him playing any tricks. Let's just send him out like that to harm others. Hee, Darsos, except that you will be unable to escape that cursed fate. I muttered a malicious curse filled with resentment. After which, I looked once more at the new achievement I unlocked before setting off for the enthronement ceremony with tears in my eyes. Mommy, why is this elder brother wearing a skirt? Ah, don't look. Hurry up and go. The system jumps at once more. That childlike voice also made my heart stop. I thought that my true identity is revealed. Ding! Congratulations for appearing in public places wearing female clothes for the third time. You have unlocked the hidden achievement dress wearing men, and you have been awarded the honorary title, Tranny Director. After equipping the title, all living beings who bear resemblance to females, this includes trannies, female muscular heroines, transsexual and several other life forms whose genders are unknown, will feel significantly more intimate with you, and their wariness against you will be lowered. The possibility of them falling in love with you is also reduced significantly. This title is automatically binded with the title King of Gentlemen, and the effect is constantly in an active mode. He seems not bad. It feels like I can tell him everything. He is really suitable as a sister and a soulmate. However, it feels weird to see him as a dating partner. This is probably because I don't see him as a male. System notice: I didn't expect that you would notice such a hidden achievement. As expected of the King of Gentlemen. Come and chant with me. Cross-dressing isn't a crime. Only cross-dressing without sufficient beauty is a crime. I am the great king of male cross-dressers, Lord Roland. Oh yeah. Actually, for gentlemen and the like, I am already numb and apathetic to it already. However, that possibility of them falling in love with you is also reduced significantly, is an actual and tangible curse of misfortune. The curse makes a certain man who died inexperienced, and who despite having a girlfriend but yet is equivalent to having none due to their ultimate long-distance relationship, inducing and urging him squat by the corner of the wall and draw circles. Ding! Allow me to elaborate slightly more on it. Abnormal people, that is gentlemen, would be unaffected by this side effect. Thus, please make sure to enjoy the true and sincere relationship between gentlemen. Right, if you do not wish to be dissected, as well as for the peace of the world, please make sure not to be caught committing adultery by the demon Marquis, who is becoming more and more Yandir. This is unrelated to the peace of the world. It is very possible for her to send her true body down out of a moment of rage, prompting a war between gods, causing the direct eruption of a world war. You still dare to say that your relationships have nothing to do with the peace of the world? Lord Yong-I. Rosemary questions in a quiet voice, bringing me back from my thoughts. The royal family attendant by her side continues to maintain her smile and her manners even upon seeing me in a daze. Lord, our emperor has invited you for a small discussion in the reception room. Looks like what has to come will eventually come. I did not think that Darsos would invite me here just to spectate the enthronement ceremony. Under the guidance of the attendant, I swiftly arrived at the VIP room. Soon, the main character of the day arrives dressed in countless ornaments, just like a Christmas tree. Emperor of all and Empire Darsos I. This is Rosemary, my attendant. I introduced him with vile intentions at heart. Rosemary slightly lifts her skirt elegantly with a perfect smile. However, she didn't receive a corresponding response. After nodding his head perfunctory, that fellow actually continues to stare fixedly at me. You are still as beautiful as always. How have you been? I miss you. Alright, his first sentence already plants in me an intention to draw my sword and murder him. From a certain viewpoint, this is also quite a remarkable ability. To say the truth, my current appearance is completely identical with Ren's. The young Ren's development seems to have been delayed, leaving some space for me, who has reverted back to a young boy, to impersonate her. This fellow can't possibly be a pervert who is into Lolas. Whoa. Behind my back, after hearing those praises from his nephew, Rosemary bursts into laughter. Although she immediately covers her mouth, it is already too late. For an attendant to be so disrespectful, it is the same as mocking the emperor in his face. The emperor, who has been angsty recently, instinctively reaches out for his sword. But upon seeing me standing in front of my attendant to shield her, he furls his eyebrows, displaying his displeasure, although his words speak otherwise. What I am talking about is your disposition, the disposition of a conqueror, and not your figure. Actually, your figure is also not bad for your age. Darsos's voice got quieter and quieter as he displayed what it means to stab oneself in one's own foot means with his own actions. However, as I am not a female, saying that I have no figure made me feel slightly happy instead. However, males should have no figure from the start. Did somewhere go wrong? Did something go wrong from the very start? I could only contain those furious roars to my heart. After a short moment, I suppress my anger and ask, "Why are you looking for me? You should be really busy now. Just speak of what you want directly." "Princess Roland, are you willing to become the Empress of All-Land Empire? I promise you that I will not interfere in your personal life after the marriage. If you are willing to merge the two countries together, I will even grant the East Mist Communal Country the highest level of autonomy and make it All-Land Empire's richest and most peaceful district." I reject. I squeezed out these words from the gaps between my teeth. Despite being filled with rage, not being able to lash out at him made me frustrated. I am really considering whether I should look for a priest of the god of fate to change my fate, even though there is a high probability they are just scammers bearing the flag of the god of fate. I know that you are worried that the All-Land Empire will make use of this opportunity to eat into and annex the East Mist Communal Country. How about this? You can entrust your royal power to someone trustworthy when our second child is born. Enough. There is a limit to my patience, insult me no further. My angry words stuffs the rest of Darso's words back into his throat. He stares furiously at me before eventually shaking his head, signaling for his assistant to back him up. "Hermit, it is exactly as you said. I can't convince her at all. You give it a try. I have already said that your method may be useful in coaxing little girls, but it is meaningless in front of a true conqueror." "Your Majesty, since we are unable to get through via feelings, why don't we cut to the chase and talk about official business instead?" Hermit seems to understand my temper well and didn't say anything excessive, cutting straight to the chase by listing out their trade in terms. It seems that due to the changes in the situation and the signing of the contract, the All-Land royalty has also changed their original goal. That proposal isn't a simple and innocent one. In their eyes, this isn't a means for them to annex the East Mist but a type of bribery directed towards the princess herself. "As long as you are willing to become the Empress of All-Land, you will become the most authoritative person in the Empire, second to only the Emperor. The women in the back palace is free for you to touch. It is sufficient as long as you bear 2 children of the bloodline of the All-Land royalty. Also, Darso's isn't a man who gives in to lust, so you don't have to worry about him forcing himself onto you. Rather than saying that you are a couple, it is more like a relationship between collaborators." "Children?" Enraged to the limit, I even started laughing. However, the other party thought that it is a sign that my determination is wavering, so he steps up his persuasion. "Military might, wealth, beauties, land, whatever you desire, we are able to fulfill it. Why limit your attention span to just that small country by the border? If you accept our conditions, the whole island is yours. Our future lies in the whole world. With your assistance, we would be able to dominate the world." "Why me? As a countryside princess, how am I deserving of such prestige?" This time, the one replying is Darsos himself. "Don't put yourself down. Who dares to underestimate the twin stars of the Mist bloodline? Besides, judging by just how you were able to activate the Scarlet Conqueror's final form proves that you have the quality of a conqueror, not to mention your angel bloodline. You are worth us putting our stakes on." "What does the East Mist counts as?" "The continent extends far and wide, waiting for our discovery and dominance. Besides, although I might be a little unreliable, my intuition tell me that if I were to want to conquer this continent, you are a factor that I cannot lack. Your true potential and strength is definitely not just limited to the extent you displayed." "Alright, I admit that these are all excuses just to convince myself. I have fallen for you and I think that you are the one most suited to be my empress. Marry me. Together, from the All-Land Empire, we will rule over the entire world, bringing our own order upon Ike." Indubitably, this is a kind of bribery. If the one listening to these words here is really the princess of that small country, compared to returning to her poor and weak homeland and struggling for the fate of that country in the Icelands, being the queen of a large country is a much better decision. Not to mention, when the person he is convincing is a 14-year-old lass, the probability of success is much higher. However, he has miscalculated right from the start. This option was never one that I would have taken. "Lord, can I laugh? I really can't take it any longer." Rosemary, who is disguised as an attendant, may seem calm on the surface, but I could stifle laughter in his voice from his phylactery. "Hold it in. Should I say, as expected of the legendary king of the winter wolves. That incredible intuition of his allowed him to see through part of my disguise. However, the problem is that he has been wrong right from the very start. I would still have to reject your offer. I will claim whatever I want for myself. I don't even want to consider such a foolish matrimony. Besides, your proposal today is a mistake by itself. In the future, you, probably, will regret it. I, Darsos, never regret my words. Alright, this time, it is my turn to try my hardest to stifle my laughter. The one who said that he would never regret his words previously was the old Lion King, but he didn't end up well. I estimate that there is a high possibility he probably regretted his actions eventually. As for Darsos, no matter how I looked at it, it is obviously the plot development that would lead to a tragedy. My mood suddenly lifts and I smile mockingly. HMPH, I look forward to the arrival of that day. Who knows, when the contract loses its potency 10 years later, we might even end up crossing blows. Finally comprehending that his proposal and his plan to bribe me have failed utterly, Darso sighs and shrugs lightly. He seems to be on the verge of saying something when the door to the room suddenly opens. Who is it? Didn't I say that no one is allowed to enter? The Emperor's furious roar made the man shiver. However, recalling the intelligence he just obtained, the royal attendant rushes to the side of the Emperor's ear and whispers into it. Although he is speaking silently, my ear, which isn't too far away from him, has always been sensitive. The water level has suddenly risen. The sea folks have climbed to shore. The defense line along the river has been breached. Lord Bastler has started fighting with the nine-headed dragon. Even before the enthronement ceremony even begun, the situation in Alland Empire's capital, Kajursi City, went out of control. War has already erupted. P.S. Arthenia. Truthfully, I don't get the link here. When I first saw the word, I thought Arthenia would be Athena, but it doesn't seem so. She isn't the goddess of beauty either, it is Aphrodite. I tried googling but there isn't any results. Gonna reach the climax of the arc soon. Smile. A dozen or so more chapters to the next arc feels like an accomplishment every time a new tab opens by the side of the chapter list. BTW. Please do point out grammar mistakes so that I can take note of it the next time I work on the chapters. Chapter 112, City of Rain, AD 1897, the summer of the year of the Griffin, a year fated to be etched in the hearts of many. Regardless of whether it is the year of the onset of the eternal sacred war, the year which the sea folk first stepped on the stage of history, or the year the City of Rain Felasi is born, this would be a year that would be marked by the later generations. After all, too many events happened in this single year. From the very start, everyone, including me, has underestimated the ambitions of the sea folk, as well as the Queen of Storms and the water elemental goddess who are backing them. The very first prerequisite to make an accurate assessment of a situation is to receive reliable intelligence of the entire situation. However, the surface dwellers know too little about the sea folk. When the sea folk first invaded, even the brightest strategists could only make conservative assessments based on previous incidents in the past. It should only be a small-scale war, or perhaps, it can't even be called a war. It is only an attack on the cities along the shore. After all, they are unable to climb onto shore to occupy our territory. This kind of war is meaningless, and as intelligent creatures, the sea folk understands it. They can't possibly be thinking of killing all of those living on the surface and consider it as a victory. As long as our living spaces cannot be overlapped, they are unable to come onto shore and we are unable to live in the water, then a full-blown war between both of us is pointless and impossible to happen. Profits are always involved when it comes to war between countries and races. Regardless of whether it is a fight for living space, resources, settling grudges between top brasses, stabilizing the hearts of their people, or the common will of the military, there is a possibility of war breaking out. However, if there isn't sufficient profits for one to reap, or when the losses far surpasses the gains, then the probability of the occurrence of this kind of meaningless war is almost null. The sea folk are unable to stay on the surface for extended periods of time. They are just cannon fodders forced onto the shore by the malevolent goddess Queen of Storms. As long as we drag it out, they will retreat sooner or later. In this world, even the will of the gods aren't absolute. The gods above accepts the faith of different tribes and races. In exchange, they would protect their worshippers based on their concept and the territory they rule over. However, if they were to force everyone to devote themselves into a war that would bring about deaths with no profits in exchange, it would already be a positive situation for them to be insulted behind their backs. In fact, even abandoning the faith and looking for a new one is a possibility. After all, this isn't a world ruled by just a single faith. Many of the gods were once humans, and the distance between humans and gods aren't that far apart. Gods require the faith of the mortals, while the weak mortals require the protection of the gods. This is also the basis for the All-End Empire's strategy to drag on the war. The think tanks of the royal family pat their chest in confidence, putting their lives on the line to guarantee that the attacks of the sea folks are strong externally but weak internally. They claim that this is only the prelude to the sacred war, and their offensive line will crumble in a matter of time. Due to the think tanks emphasizing that the sea folk aren't sufficiently ambitious, the ones most of them are guarded against is the chaos malevolent gods who force them onto the shore. Most All-Enders neglected this threat right in front of them, and instead, they devoted their attention to scheming against their own race, vassals. In reality, while a portion of sea folk is able to climb to shore, nearly no surface life forms are capable of surviving for extended periods of time underwater. This caused the intelligence between both sides to be unproportionate. For one, Tracy, who has left for the ocean for more than a few months, is totally unaware of the revival of the water elemental goddess, as well as the great change that occurred in the world of sea folk. To explain this, I would first have to touch on the living conditions of the sea folk. Even though the ocean is incredibly vast and it seems as though there is endless resources and living space, even when the strength of an average sea folk isn't low, the life of sea folk is actually much more difficult and tragic compared to the life of the surface dwellers. The deep sea is an extremely dangerous location. Not mentioning the low temperature and water pressure, which could prove to be fatal, the giant oceanic monsters whose strength cannot be assessed are the true dictators of the ocean. Most sea folk can only live by the shallower coastal sea areas by the continent to make ends meet. There is actually a limit to the living space of sea folk. In their limited living space, they face a very practical problem. Food is never sufficient. There are countless shoals of fishes in the ocean. However, the truth is that living off hunted fishes isn't a reliable plan. There may be many schools of fishes around, but most of them are owned by someone else. The amount of fish in the shallow waters is extremely limited. After growing agriculture in the ocean became a joke, when depending on simply hunting is insufficient to ensure their survival. In order to ensure that there is sufficient food in their surroundings, rearing fishes became the only option. In fact, fish herders have a long history behind them and is a long-established tradition. The resources in the fish rearing industry determines the amount of members in a sea tribe. The number of members in a sea tribe and their strength determine the territory they would possess for the rearing of the fish. Just like herding on the surface, the fishes they are herding would consume plants or hunt other shoals, resulting in the balance of the environment getting destroyed. When there is a negative growth in the herd, it is impossible for them to avoid migration. The livelihood of the herd and the sea folk would deplete the resources in the area. The bigger the tribe is, the shorter the interval between their migration. From a certain sense, they are just like centaur nomads, just that the livestock that centaurs herd are cows and lambs, and they seek for areas with grass, whereas the ones the sea tribes herd are shoals of fish and they seek the tidal currents. The ability of the siren and mermaids in summoning shoals of fishes to them through their voice may seem mystical and amazing, but in reality, it is just a tool for herding. It is no different from the flutes and whistles of the shepherds. Furthermore, the ones who respond to their summoning are only their own herd and their ocean companions. Herding fishes may seem magical and beautiful, but it is actually a tough job. Chasing the current tides and searching for aquatic plants requires a great amount of experience. Furthermore, migrating brings around a whole lot of danger. Who would know if they would meet with a sea monster or an opposing tribe in their next migratory spot? If their luck is bad, they might even meet with great losses in consecutive migrations, resulting in the dissolution of the tribe. Those of the herding tribes possess an aggressive nature, causing most of the tribes to work as part-time mercenaries or even bandits. On the other hand, their way of survival through herding in tribes has determined that a centralized power of a country will not be born. When a tribe reaches a certain number, In order to compete for limited living space and resources, they would definitely fall apart. Without a capital or demarcation of territories, how can a feudal state be born? There are few areas in the shallow waters where resources are concentrated at. However, there are limitations on the numbers who could stay there for extended periods of time. Every period of time, the people staying there would change. Only the strongest tribes compete over these places and achieve victory to live stable lives. No one can guarantee that they would not meet with a calamity that they are unable to withstand in the next migration and die tragically. A stable life in a fixed location is the desire of the sea folk, as well as the main reason why they envy the surface dwellers, viewing them with resentment even. Why should those weak surface dwellers possess a blissful and stable daily life when we don't even know where we would be tomorrow? At this point, since fighting a war requires profits and reasons, what the water elemental goddess Salos and the Queen of Storms could offer to those practical sea folk for them to willingly stake their lives, serving as cannon fodders, is obvious. A capital, a city to serve as a stepping stone towards a new world, to the sacred lands in the hearts of the sea folk. After their capital is built, a kingdom will be created. A kingdom that belongs to the sea folk. Indubitably, most sea folk are unable to leave the surface of the water and survive for the shore for extended periods of time. However, what if rain falls continuously on that plot of land and there is always a few meters depth of water on the surface of that land? This way, the sea folk would be able to live freely in their water kingdom. They could retain a portion of dry land to serve as farmland and enslave the surface races to serve as farmers. This gives rise to the possibility for the birth of a kingdom belonging to the sea folk on the surface. Sounds inconceivable, but in this world of magic and true gods, everything is possible. Furthermore, storm and rain is the concept of the guardian goddess of the sea folk, the Queen of Storm. Not to mention, the water elemental goddess Salos is an expert in water arts. If there someone could build a city of rain with an internal cycle of rain, it could only be them. In the original history, the revival of the ancient elemental gods became the first wave of bosses in this world. Every single one of them are close to the existence of a true god, so they were far beyond the abilities of the players. Thus, the omnipotent developer god planned a series of plot leading to their death, causing those unlucky fellows who had barely awakened to die tragically under the hands of the natives and the chosen heroes of fate, and turning their servants, the elementals, into training fighters for the heroes. There is still a difference between that virtual game world and the real world. In this world, there isn't the existence of the powerful god named game developer. Otherwise, if those level 10 to 20 rookies were to really meet with the barely awakened and weak ancient elemental gods, they would not have proven their worth by slaying the gods through their overwhelming explosive luck. Probably, they would end up offering their physical body and souls as nutrients for them. Due to this, other than the unlucky fire elemental god, the other released elemental gods began to recover from their long slumber. As beings who have once lived gloriously, how could they be content with being forgotten by the world? The moment existences of their level make their move, everything will change. They are a few plots written in the walkthrough that are wrong. History and fate had been on different paths from the very start. Under the great temptation of completely changing their own life as well as their descendants, the invasion of the sea folk is no longer a skirmish as it was in history. It has turned into an all-out war, a destructive invasion. The all-land empire, which has neglected the determination and the strength of the other party, is still dreaming of becoming a superpower, not noticing at all the calamity that is on their doorstep. At this moment, a grand ceremony is being conducted on the surface. Concurrently, another ceremony is also being held underwater at a much larger scale. At the bottom of Kajersi River, concealed by a magic fog, is a bustling sight. Over hundreds of elites of the sea folk are serving as guards without any complaints. Countless powerful sea folk are concentrated at this area. The arrogant and insolent Naga royalties have a smile of humility on their face. The irascible and savage sea monsters are wearing a helmet muffling their voices and a chain that binds their movement, and the bloodthirsty sea giants have also put down their rusty anchors, trying their best to lower their heads to feign humility. The only one who could make these powerful beings to lower their head is an even more powerful supreme being. On the giant altar carved on a 7-color coral rock, there are 2 thrones, one big and one small, made of jade. Of the 2, The smaller one is empty, whereas the larger one has nice beauty with snow-white skin sitting on it. Her form is half human, half fish. The upper half of her body is human while dragging along a long tail reminiscent of a sea dragon in her bottom half. Although she looks small and beautiful in contrast to the giant altar, she is actually taller than the bulkiest sea giant. She looks even more elegant than the royalty of the sea folk, the mermaids, who are known for their beauty. If one were to stare closer, the skin of the beauty who possesses scales and tail seems to be a little transparent, as though it is made of water. Let's begin. The cold voice of the water elemental goddess has a faint tinge of weakness to it. Her voice isn't loud, but it resounds by the ears of every single sea folk. This isn't magic, just the river water conveying the will of their master. This is the world of water, her world. In here, she possesses limitless authority and unmatched prestige. After Alos's will is conveyed, the ritual officially begins. As Alos's white jade-like finger touches into blank space, an intangible gate opens. The water elemental dimension could be seen on the other end. That is Alos's home as well as her kingdom. Countless water elemental fishes swim out, and the moment they reach the altar, they turn into pure water in a series of ripples. Nourished, the coral altar emits a faint light. Middle tier water elementals, water elemental warlords, water elemental elders, and ancient water elementals, strong existences appear one after another on their own initiative to become sacrifices for the altar. Elemental life forms do not fear death. To them, death is just another passageway back to their world. On the other side, a black-robed sea folk walks onto the altar. Carrying the crest of storm, they are the priests of the Queen of Storms. Capable of bringing about storms and creating gigantic waves capable of swallowing warships, they are of noble standing and possesses great influence in each tribe. At this moment, despite their esteemed position, they could only do the same task: walking to the altar, picking up the short ritual dagger and stabbing their own heart before collapsing in satisfaction. As these respected storm priests fall one after another, a faint figure starts to appear on the smaller empty throne. She is only about the size of a regular human, far from the size of Elos. Even so, any sea folk who sees her would lower their proud heads trembling. As a malevolent chaos god, she doesn't possess a resounding reputation on the surface just like her other comrades. The Queen of Storms is delighted to accept the blood tribute from her worshippers, and her will has already descended here. Your souls will step into my god realm, and your doings will be sung by your descendants. The words of approval from the avatar of the goddess made even more black-robed priests quicken their pace onto the altar, vying for the opportunity to sacrifice themselves in front of their god. As the tributes fall one after another, the faint figure of the Queen of Storms gradually turns more and more tangible. Along with the descent of the avatar of the true god, a powerful storm and roars of lightning appear in the sky on top of the river. Just like Halos, the green-skinned Queen of Storms also possesses traits unique to the sea folk. The moment she turns corporeal, the impatient goddess couldn't immediately begin on what that would turn out to be a calamity for the surface life forms. Kajursi City, from now on, only the capital of the sea folk, city of Rain Phalasai, will exist. My people, use your own strength to fight for the kingdom you dream of. The will of the god is conveyed through the storm. The next moment, the imposing avatar of the true god picks up a ritual dagger herself and stabs it into her own heart. By the time the will on the avatar returns back to the main body, the body of the avatar has already turned into multiple tornadoes under the effect of the black-colored god power of storm. The sacrifice of the avatar of the storm goddess would probably cause the strength of her main body regress significantly. However, sending such a big present and when the sacred war has just begun, the order gods are in for a headache. At this moment, the numerous tornadoes pierces into the heavens and a new cycle of nature is being constructed. Concurrently, the water elemental goddess conveys her will. I will grant that city the name of City of Rain Phalasai. In an area around this city, rain will never stop falling. The land will always be accompanied with water, and the citizens of the City of Rain will become the subjects of water. In the face of countless storms and the great strength of a true god, the boundary between water and the heavens is broken through. Countless billowing waves is pulled into the sky to form new rainwater. A new cycle of nature has been created. However, even though the water level of the entire city is rising, the water in the flooded Pier district is slowly retracting. Very quickly, when the water level is maintained at around a meter tall, The storm diminishes significantly. Under the assistance of water elemental Grand Dukes, the Pale Alos passes through the dimension gate and returns to the water elemental dimension. Due to her overexerting herself, she is bound to return to a long slumber. Following the will of the Queen of Storms, let's fight for our own capital. The reticent blue sea dragon floats to the surface. The sea giants pick up their giant anchor while the Nagas begin to prepare their spells. Ha, it seems like it has finally begun. By the river, the nine-headed dragon Emperor Hydra, who has restrained himself for a long time, became the first one to enter the city, creating tremors throughout the city. The sudden rising waves crashes through the barriers that were set in place. The falling rain caused the residents' vision to blur, while the waist-level water severely limited their motions. The all-in garrison troops, who were at a loss from the sudden bizarre phenomenon in the flood, will soon face their hardest aquatic battle. Evil dragon, die! A silver flash of lightning streaks across the sky. The dragon head at the very front is slashed into two in an instant. Green dragon blood spills out and corrupts the river water with a pungent smell. Ah, darn dragon slayer! While the mortals are gradually falling back from the aggressive sea folk, the first one to declare war against them is the heroic spirit Basilar. P.S. Chapter 113. Desperate situation. The roar of the storm outside the windows could no longer be considered to be just in the background. Along with the onset of the flood came the rage of the oceans. Humans had conquered the most fertile lands for far too long. As the victors of the previous sacred war, they do possess the right to be proud. The sea folk are chased into the dark and cold ocean. The beastmen lost their grasslands and plains, while the undead disappeared into the marshlands and deserts. Even the elves, who belonged to the Order faction just like the humans, was forced into seclusion in one corner of the world under the aggression of the humans. The losers of the previous sacred war have been suffering in agony for the past 1,700 years. Those surviving with long lifespans still remember how their kin and homelands were destroyed in the war. They hate and fear war, but yet they crave for it. They detest the destructive war which took everything away from them, but yet they can't quench the desire to return to the homeland of their ancestors. They hope that they will be able to vent their resentment and hatred through a war of vengeance and snatch back everything they lost. In contrast, the short lifespan humans already view themselves as the core of the world, the blessed ones of Ike, the kings of all beings. Byanlia Plains is the sacred land as well as the land of origin of the beastmen. The black land is so fertile that it is reputed that a seedling would even grow from raw ice. Yet, in the endless territories of the Saint Antonio Empire, it is considered one of the land of lesser importance. On the other hand, its original owner, the beastmen, are slaughtering others mercilessly in the underground world for the sake of survival or scavenging for food on barren lands. Back then, when the sea folk were known as Water Tribe, they could be found in every river, reservoir, sea and lake. However, if the sea folk were to appear in a lake on the continent now, an army would be mobilized to exterminate it in an instant, not to mention the adventurers who are attracted by the bounty on them. The elf kingdom, which should have been an ally, could always find their own kin in slavery markets. The skirmishes that occur between the elves and human kingdoms by the borders have never stopped. The heroic knights of back then have become slothful. Compared to the other races, the humans have been living too peacefully, and their easy life makes them arrogant and egocentric. Being born without longevity, their short-sightedness allows them to forget their ancestors' hard work and glory. They feel that they are the leader of all beings and that the other life forms should be their servants. Beastmen, aren't those just barbarians who can't even speak properly? In the face of our new technology and war machines, these wild barbarians are not worth mentioning. Elves? Hey, a bunch of foolish antiques. If the sacred war were to occur, any two of our superpowers would be more than sufficient to sweep through the whole continent. We could probably end up as the easiest victor of the sacred war. The victors of the previous sacred war are still gleeful over their dominance, devoting their body and soul into igniting an internal conflict among their own race. On the other hand, the losers are suffering in agony, bearing all pain as they bided their time for a chance to flip the tables. The different attitudes of both sides towards war have caused the original victors of the Order faction to unknowingly descend into an absolutely disadvantageous situation. On the plains in the south, the Earth Elemental God and the Beastmen had started walking together. On a frigid night, sitting by the bonfire to warm themselves up, The chieftains point to the homeland of their dreams as they roar and cry. The beastmen warriors share a drink of their blood as a symbol of alliance while preparing to set off. On a barren island in the south, there are the Black Wings who have been reduced to a mere pirating tribe. Yet, under the assistance of the wind elemental god, they regain their ability to fly. Activating their ancient floating island and picking up their sacred spears, they are ready for the new hunting season. If it wasn't for Elisa consuming the fire elemental god as a tonic, when the four ancient elemental gods move out together, the elemental tide of the entire dimension will rise exponentially. Magic, divine arts and supernatural abilities will become easier to learn and use. As the origin of all elemental magic, the power of the four main elements will increase explosively at the same time. It will be easier for guests from other dimensions to traverse over. The elementals will become a usual guest in the main dimension, while the demons of the Chaos faction has already embarked on a new bloody battle of elimination. The new warlords will gain the opportunity to lead the demons to reap the souls of the surface dwellers. Perhaps, this may just be the prelude to the eternal sacred war. However, if the humans are unable to even withstand the prelude, then calling it the final battle isn't wrong as well. Other than the humans, the next strongest faction in the Order faction should be the elves, who had fractured into countless kingdoms, race and tribes. However, from 100 years ago, the elf kingdoms had begun sealing their territory up. Despite receiving an omen of the onset of the sacred war, the elves and their gods didn't have the intention to notify their allies. After all, they know that even if they were to inform them, they will most probably only meet with indifference and sarcasm by the arrogant humans. You can praise an elf for their looks, for their kindness and for their intelligence. However, you can never praise them for being forgiving. In the elf language, forgiveness and short-term memory are synonyms. For those narrow-minded long ears, the resentment they have accumulated for 1,000 years ago feels fresh as though it was from yesterday. For them, who had wanted to stay out of the battle, it is already considered kind of them to not put the humans down. Also, there had been information that the elf gods have been in contact with the malevolent gods of chaos all along. It is unsure whether these rumors are true, but it is a fact that the human gods have relationships with the other gods. After all, there would always be some estrangement between an ex-leader and a current leader. It is just like an ex-celebrity looking at an idol that is popular at the moment. Even if they say nothing on the surface, they were bound to have certain complicated emotions in regards to it. It is impossible for their relationship to be good. Alright, back to the main topic at hand. The current situation is already apparent before us. The Chaos faction has been sharpening their knives for the past 1,000 years. In comparison, the human kingdoms are still in a state of peace and expending themselves in an internal struggle. At the very least, the result of the war in the early stages is bound to be disastrous for them. Afterwards, while I was reflecting on my actions, I realized that I made the same mistake as the Celestial Tower. They were too reliant on prophecies while I was too reliant on my history prophecy. Just because that history is the projection of true events that had occurred and the portion in the beginning was accurate doesn't mean that it would go down the way it was written. Other than my existence that causes a butterfly effect on the world, just the very fact that there isn't any other players existent means that everything would be different. In a real world without players blessed by the heavens, the three great elemental gods can't possibly be killed by some ridiculous plot. The level of the elemental calamity far surpasses what was projected in the walkthrough. Perhaps, compared to the entire sacred war in the continent, it could only be considered as the appetizer before the meal. But, this prelude battle would definitely be much more gruesome than in history. Alright, even if I predicted the events accurately, even if I wasn't squatting in the prison called Luwang Mountain City while studying and refining the laws, I am still helpless in the matters which involves countless powerful gods. The current situation has already diverged from history. If things were to go down as projected in the walkthrough, when the four elemental gods were eradicated, 3 of them were sealed and only the fire elemental god managed to escape from his seal in the underground world. He worked together with the underground alliance which freed him, causing the conflict between the underground world and the surface to escalate. At present, due to my influence, the fire elemental god which should have been a big headache is completely gotten rid of. On the other hand, The other three elemental god found their own helpers, becoming a source of huge trouble. It is meaningless to debate which history would be better. Assumptions do not hold in history and there are no ifs. It is impossible to debate for sure which side would is better. At the current moment, I have to face the storm that was created by the wings of the butterfly of fate, the great wave that is stirred by the water elemental goddess. Right after walking out of the reception room, despite experiencing numerous wars, I was still shocked by the sight before me. Tornadoes fill the entire site outside the windows. They seem like a giant dragons pulling water to the sky while the ominous dark clouds continue to rain at a fixed pace. The entire city has already been converted into a city of rain. A phenomenon of God. This isn't a description but a judgment towards the situation. Only God power can create such a bizarre sight. Inside the sparring field, the hall on the first floor is already in a mess. Water floods the interior of the location and on a temporary stage that was built for this event, nobles are communicating urgently with their subordinates. The moment Darsos walks down, informants rush up and surround him. Innumerable glow of the mystical arts flickers. The valuable high-tier mages have become the only reliable messenger here. The defense line along the coast has been broken through. There are too many sea folk. These sea giants cannot be stopped. Head of court mages also has died in battle. The defense line of court mages is collapsing. The White Wolf guards from different locations are being surrounded and exterminated by the sea folk. They can't break out of the encirclement. All roads for the movements of troops to assist the defense lines have been blocked by the escaping refugees. Nobles are commanding their private army to kill them to open a way through. Bad news come floating down like snowflakes. However, what grips the hearts of the crowd here are the displays sent over by the mages who are stationed at different streets. In a certain display, the all-ends prided White Wolf guards who are equipped with top-tier equipment are blocked by the short fishmen. It is difficult for the war horses they bred carefully to move even a single step in the flood. In order to move in the flood, a knight got off his horse and unequips his prided Missler mithril alloy equipment helplessly. In the water, it is impossible for them to conduct a fearless charge which they are known for. The indestructible savage heavy sword cannot find its targets. In the heavy rain, it is impossible to throw the exploding savage javelin at all. The knights wading through the water couldn't catch up at all with the fishmen swimming away. Their heavy armor and weapon became their greatest burden. The powerful White Wolf guards fought poorly in the water, their performance not even matching up to a fisherman. Even though the voice that is sent along with the display isn't loud, the distorted face of the knight in pain, the spear that is stabbed into his back and the blood flowing out from his wound is clear to see. Walalala. Cheering delightfully, the head of the fisherman who killed the knight pops out from the water surface. Then, he dives back in again and he bides his time for another opportunity to conduct an assault. The short figures of the fishermen, which were usually mocked by the other races, had become their strongest weapon in this flood. Mud is mixed into the river water, making it impossible for the knights to discover the fishmen hiding in the water. On the other hand, a sturdy-looking knight got captured in a net. Then, with a jerk, he is pulled down. He is still wearing his armor as his powerful body is able to carry it. He struggles in the net, unable to climb back up at all. He uses all his might in an attempt to tear apart the net but to no avail. In the end, he could only widen his eyes with his hands clutching onto his neck. Just like that, he drowned to death in front of everyone else. That is little Mickey, the youngest Silver Knight of the Guards. His ability to maneuver his horse in a charge is the strongest in the 7th Squadron. For him to die like that to a lowly fishman. Hawk, the strongest knight of the 7th Squadron, for him to drown to death just like that. Lord, please think of a solution. We can't all die like this meaninglessly. The furious roar of the White Wolf Guard in the hall makes everyone feel desolate. One of the core values of the knight is that they do not fear sacrifice. However, there is also a rule that their sacrifice has to hold some meaning. If they were to die in a charge towards a giant dragon, then that would be an honor. However, dying in the hands of the weak fishmen who don't mean a thing on other days is an insult to the knights. Given how the powerful White Wolf Guards are already in such a dire situation, the All-Enders in the other displays are in a worse position. A beautiful mermaid dances under the water. The pouring rain reminds her of the waterfall in her hometown. Thus, She fondles the magic seashell in her golden hair and starts to sing. The singing of the mermaids is well known in the world. The beautiful and elegant figure of them dressed in seashells are even more enchanting. However, the warriors on the battlefield didn't have the leisure to enjoy the performance. That is because along with the song of the mermaid, threats lurk in the waters. Ah, a carnivorous fish. There are carnivorous fishes under the water. The warrior who cries in agony falls into the murky water. A few seconds later, a pile of white bones with teeth marks on it floats on top of the red water. Jellyfish, there are poisonous jellyfishes. Everyone, leave the water surface. The transparent and colorless jellyfishes are undetectable under the water. Their tentacles and skin are filled with deadly venom that would cause even the strongest warriors to be numb to death unknowingly. Ah, swordfish. This warrior can be considered fortunate. At the very least, he knows who is the one that killed him. The swordfish's long mouth stabs into his waist. Clutching his intestines, he struggles slightly for a bit before falling into the water, dead. Along the sweet singing of the mermaid, the delicacies of the sea that were served in the restaurants on previous days turned into deadly predators. Everyone knows that staying in the water even a moment longer could mean death. However, in the city of rain blessed by the two gods using god power, there isn't a single part of the city that isn't flooded. There aren't any places for the warriors to escape to. Although there are people who abandon everything to climb to the roof, looking at the fence from a group of sharks below, what await them is still their doomsday. A large amount of seafolk surge into the city. If the low middle tier fighting power of the seafolk made their opponents sigh helplessly, then the strength of the top tier fighting power made them feel despair. Summon explosion flames. In despair, a battle mage who specializes in fire magic summons the fire spell he is the most adept in. However, before the flames could even take shape, a young Naga claps her hands together and a wave of water rushes towards him, extinguishing the flames. As an incarnation of the water snake spirit, every Naga would at least be capable of a little bit of water magic. Perhaps, on the continent, it would be only sufficient to quench their thirst. But in the water, they can raise menacing waves capable of great destruction. Furthermore, she was only an apprentice. The sea folk's fighting power has increased exponentially under the blessings of the water goddess and sea goddess. The shock waves from the footsteps of the sea giants generate gargantuan waves capable of breaking through the sturdiest fortress easily. The spellcasters of the sea folk laugh sinisterly as they summon giant waves while hiding under the water to scour everything. The ones here today are the elites from more than 100 tribes. The human warriors who are separated from their groups by the billowing waves are surrounded and killed. Even in terms of the quantity of high-tier fighting power, the human faction aren't in an advantageous situation. Never fight with the sea folk in water, unless you possess fins and don't need to breath. It is unsure who is the one to say this ancient adage. The hall in the sparring field remained eerily silent. Then, faint sobbing could be heard. Yes, no one is able to defeat the sea folk in the sea. Just like how I almost died from the encirclement of a group of fishmen just a few days ago, the fighting prowess of the sea folk in water is unimaginable. This is also the reason why the two goddesses can rest peacefully after they finished their blessings on the city of rain. In their opinion, there is no need for them to interfere in the situation anymore. The current situation proves that their judgment is accurate. From the moment when the city flooded, the victors have already been decided. The All-End Empire is fated to lose its extravagant city of pearls. No one expected that the powerful empire would meet with a calamity of this level on such a joyous day of celebration. Everyone sets their gaze on Darsos as they wait for his final decision. A city isn't the only thing an empire possesses. In their vast lands, they can still form new armies. As long as they remain alive, there will still be hope and the day of their vengeance will come. It is meaningless for them to give up their lives right now. Everyone knows and understands what they have to do now, but the cruel call has to be made and borne by the inaugurating emperor. Abandon the defense line. All those who can leave, retreat out of the city. Shouting these words from the gaps between his teeth, Darsos seemed to have aged 10 years. No, my parents are still at home. Your Majesty, please save them. A son of nobility cries out, and this is only the start. My precious little son is still fighting, how can we give up now? This is the most despicable betrayal. An old general roars at the emperor. His soldiers are dying tragically one after another. The moment a retreat occurs, They will all turn into sacrificial cannon fodders. There will be no possibility for their survival. Codex is our capital. Losing our capital, how can we still stand with our heads up high in the Ike continent? We will become the laughingstock of the entire world. The old Duke laughs miserably. What he said is true. The only ones who smile cheerfully at this situation are those envoys of the states who are forced to submit to the All-End Empire. Even though they are worried about their safety, happiness could be seen on their face. To the envoys, even if they were to die, as long as they do not sign on those clauses which brings shame to their country, as long as their descendants can live with their heads up high, it will all be worth it even if they were to die at this instant. I said, retreat. The Scarlet Conqueror emits a blood-like glow as the Emperor stabs a sword into the ground. Staying in this city to await death? Foolish. So what if we lose our White Wolf Guards? We can build the White Lion Guards and White Tiger Guards. So what if we lose our capital? There are vast lands to our all-land. There are countless cities similar to Codex. We can just pick a new one. Indeed, we have lost today. We just have to mark this shame, and tomorrow, our great armies will repay everything back to them. I say, we retreat. Take away anything of value and discard those useless monetary objects. Take away all of our nation's treasures. Prioritize our technology, children, women and elderly. Other than that, only those of high standing will be prioritized. All young males whose limbs are intact, pick up your weapons and stand alongside me. My knights and I will maintain a defense line here until the final moment. When his rage escalates past a certain level, the tone of the King of Winter Wolves turns calm instead. Just that, his trembling beard of his displays the rage he is suppressing. The Emperor's calmness and initiative to stall for time stabilize the situation at an important moment. His declaration to stand guard without second thoughts allowed him to avoid the most tragic ending. As for me, it is time for me to make a decision as well. My apologies. I didn't expect for it to turn out like this. You can leave together with the first wave of those retreating. No, I should say, please leave with them. The Goblin Bank of Green Bay. If you fulfill the terms of the contract, you can claim the key from there at any time. However, it would only be there a month later. I didn't reply directly to his words, and as usual, my words do not bear truth. I am still in the midst of making final preparations for my departure, so why would I tell the other party that the key is still on me? Leaving right now? How can this be possible? Little Wren, following my requests, is walking around town to recruit talents while Crows is still guarding at the church. They are definitely in danger at this moment. If I were to take the crucial key and escape now, not only will my comrades on the surface die for certain, even the fellows who are in the underwater base will starve to death. You intend to save your comrades? Stop joking around. The entire city is filled with sea folk. Even if it is you, fighting with a sea folk in water is suicidal. A pointless sacrifice, that is the shame of a knight. Hey, suicidal? I don't agree with your words. There is no point in explaining anything to him. I shake my head and walk down to the main hall. I take out my dimension pouch and search through my old items. Yes, even for me, there is not a chance of victory if I were to cross blows with the sea folk in the water. Furthermore, the War Angel form is extremely limited. The moment I enter the water, I won't be able to escape the pursuit of the sea folk. If so, there is no way I can achieve my goals. However, as long as I have that item, it isn't entirely impossible. There isn't a chance of victory if I were to fight in water. However, things would be differently if it is on ice. Here it is. After pouring out a bundle of prune, marbles, handmade poker cards and many other miscellaneous objects, I finally found the item I was searching for. It is a hand-carved wooden dagger. It is only slightly bigger than my hand. It is obviously a child's toy. The craftsmanship is coarse and there are a few squiggly words carved on it, as though written by a child. Carwin's sword. Roland cannot secretly take and play. Those few words are really written by a child. That is the signature Carwin's left behind on his treasured wooden sword. Back then, when he was younger, he was unwilling to address me, who was only a few minutes older than him, as his elder brother. Normally, he would just call me by my name. Fondling the scars on the sword, I feel as though I have returned back to that warm and worry-free childhood. I could almost see that rash and straightforward foolish little brother of mine. Shaking my head, This isn't the time for me to be reminiscing the past. What I need now isn't the wooden sword itself but the soul sleeping within it. Arabella, I need your help. TL, we'll be using just silver to describe the power rank of the people. Using rank sounds a bit weird now, suddenly, maybe I stared at it for too long, though if the phrasing is unclear, I will still use it. Couldn't reflect it without sounding awkward so I removed it, but it is clearly stated that the two goddesses chose to go through the ritual even though they knew it would hurt them greatly because they are confident the sea folk would be able to push it through. Chapter 114, Arabella. Despite the royal family sparring field being built on higher grounds, that icy cold river water still defies common sense and flows into the interior. This is a distortion of the physical phenomenon of water flows towards lower ground to water flows to be of average height. This is modification of the law of nature and only the highest governor of the water element is able to do it. At every single moment, the situation is worsening. I do not have time to waste. Arabella, I need your help. I need your strength. The water slowly creeps below my feet. Yet, I am still talking patiently to the wooden sword. Perhaps, I am seem like a fool to the eyes of the onlookers. However, I know that this is the only solution. Arabella, this isn't the name of a human, but a deeply wounded soul. A beautiful lady who has been sleeping for more than 300 years already. Although my plea for help has been voiced, it seems as though my plea had sunk into the deep ocean. There isn't any response at all. However, I know that she has already awakened. Just that she doesn't want to respond to my calls. Or rather, she doesn't know how she should respond to my calls. Irene, Arabella's abbreviation, there isn't much time left. We must sign the soul contract as soon as possible. Only with your help can I battle on the surface of the water. A weak voice finally echoes by my ear. I am already very tired. Soul beings do not possess physical body, so how can there be the concept of stamina and tiredness? However, I am able to understand what she means. By saying tired, perhaps she is referring to her erection of a barrier to protect her wounded heart from shattering again. Yes, so you have already rested for more than 300 years. If you don't wake up and walk under the sun for a bit, you might disintegrate soon. This isn't a lie. To humans, excessive depression is a dangerous mental illness, but to the soul beings whose souls are their physical bodies, negative emotions are like lethal poison. Perhaps, disintegrating might be a good thing. You should know that I don't want to contract with any other knight again. That's why I didn't allow Ren and the others to interrupt your slumber back then. You should still have other options. Even if you have yet to reach silver rank, as long as you were to approach them to contract with you, those frigid nightmares will not reject you. Yes, the one sleeping in the wooden sword is a frigid nightmare, a companion of a previous or a knight. At this moment, I am trying to poach her to become my mount. What I want isn't a chain who would bind me from growing further, but a pair of wings which could make me soar higher. Only you are capable of becoming my wings, and not a pair of manacles that would hinder my development. There are many paths for one to climb to the pinnacle. However, to reach the pinnacle, just one is enough. Having more powers isn't necessarily a good thing. Being too greedy would just result in one's powers losing its purity. I have already mapped out a clear plan for my own development. Ice, death, law, and holy light. These 4 fields are more than enough for me to research for my whole life. The frigid nightmare can indeed boost my battle power, but it isn't something necessary. Of course, becoming an Aurora Knight will boost my fighting power significantly, so it is something that I need right now. However, the reason why I never considered contracting with frigid nightmares is because frigid nightmares will grow along with the knight's soul wave. A mature frigid nightmare will have many marks from their previous owners. This would instead limit my growth. As a soul being, newborn frigid nightmares are a blank slate. As they grow along with their contracted knight, their master's memories and emotions will become their nutrients. The desire of their owner to become stronger will become their motivation. They are the most trusted mounts and companion of the Aurora Knights. From a certain viewpoint, as their memories and emotions tend to be extremely similar to their masters, they are like half of their master's soul. Under normal circumstances, accepting the frigid nightmare of others can allow the person to grow swiftly. However, it would be hard for them to climb to the pinnacle. Even so, there are exceptions to everything. The knight whom Irene contracted with previously has a soul wave similar to mine, or rather, Saying that it is identical isn't a mistake as well. She doesn't even have to do additional adjustments to adapt to my soul completely. No, if it is the frigid nightmare of that person, it would most probably boost my strength instead. Of course, finding an infant frigid nightmare can also fulfill my objective. However, not mentioning how difficult activating the altar will be, even if I were to obtain a frigid nightmare, I can't afford to wait that long a period for it to mature. When the frigid nightmare finally matures, I probably wouldn't need it anymore. A long silence follows after my invitation. What I received eventually is still a bitter rejection from Irene. I am already very tired and I lack battle will. In my current state, I would definitely pull you back. To a warrior, lacking battle will is equal to death. How could I not know that? A warrior who seeks death will eventually die. Even though I know that Irene is able to strengthen my current battle prowess, I never tried to awaken her from her slumber. But now, other than her, I can't find any other solution that could help me protect the people I would want to from this desperate situation. Help me, will you? I need your strength to save my comrades. To a person whose heart is dead, it would be hard to get logic through them. If so, it is better to try getting through via emotions and reality. Without your help, not only will I die, the final inheritor of the Mist bloodline will also die. If so, the contracts with the frigid nightmare will be cut totally. Alright, Irene, regardless of whether it is for our friendship when we were younger or for the future of the frigid nightmares, please lend me a hand. The spirit of the Knights dictates for them to save anyone in need. As expected, you are still that same despicable Roland. Yes, very despicable. I know how to say words that the other party is unable to reject. A true knight is unable to ignore the pleas of others. All along, that person only listens to persuasion and does not submit to force. As half a soul who shares his memories, Irene is unable to ignore my request. Besides, that person would probably return to the main dimension not too long later. Don't you want to question him? Why would he make that kind of decision? Why he, despite already making up his mind, chose to abandon you? I already know. I have already thought it through. In his eyes, the foolish spirit of the Knights cannot give him the strength he needs for vengeance. Betrayed by the humans he trusted plunged him into despair and agony. The sacrifice of his elder brother made him swear to exact vengeance towards this world. Thus, he made his choice. He abandoned everything and responded to the summons of the Chaos Abyss, entering the gates of hell, in hopes of gaining sufficient strength for vengeance. That fool has always been so extreme. However, don't you still want to ask him to his face? Ask him how he has been, whether he was beat up in the Chaos Abyss, whether he misses home or if he regrets abandoning you. Abandoning you, is it because he fears that his fall to depravity would corrupt you? Despicable, 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 despicable. It seems that my last question has hit the bullseye on the weakness of the other party. Irene is becoming agitated. The profanities of an agitated little girl lacks skill. Lacking in vocabulary, she could only repeat despicable. This is probably the vilest phrase that she could recall. She is considered a little girl even though she is a few centuries old. It was only 10 years after hatching from the egg that she fell into slumber again. Even if they shared memories and knowledge, a person who has less than 10 years of experience can only be considered a little girl. However, I seem to have underestimated the resentment of the little girl. Prince Roland, haven't you been mocking the Knight's values of protection and sacrifice? The spirit of the mist which Prince Carwins believes in was treated like a joke by you. Going by your personality, shouldn't you rationally give up those chess pieces to retain your strength? Why are you choosing the path of a protector which you have despised all along now? Yes, Irene is Carwins's frigid nightmare. This young soul has been brought up to be dim-witted like him. However, a long slumber left her time still stuck at 300 years ago. She still treats me like that young holy knight prince. Was that what I thought back then? It does sound like something I would say. There's no need for me to get sentimental now. Since she asked such words, I know that her will is wavering. Back then, I was indeed quite arrogant. In the end, I lost terribly. Now that I have gotten back to the starting point, Carwin started walking on my old path instead. Therefore, I intend to stop him. Arabella, join me. I have hidden many things from you. After our contract, you can see it all for yourself. If you are dissatisfied then, you can always break the contract. A white light silently seeps out from the wooden sword. That is Irene's reply. From the moment I invited her, it has all been decided. The pale white cold light shrouds me as the soul waves of the two souls approach one another. The benefit of being twins is that Irene doesn't have to match her wavelength to mine to contract with me. What kind of joke is this? So many things actually happened that year. So many calamities, how did you get through them? So much hatred, despair and resentment. Why haven't you gone mad yet? Greed, emptiness, slander, envy and pain. You have seen so much evil of the world. The future is so bleak. How can you remain so positive? Why haven't you given up hope? A contract between souls means exposing everything to the other. The full memory of my 300 years in 3 lifetimes. That could be called a legendary experience. This made the innocent Irene shocked. Those suppressed emotions and memories of the soul became like the most nutritious delicacies to her, causing her to grow rapidly. Perhaps, even after Pandora's box was open, even after all of the calamities have been released, but hope still remains at the bottom of the box. Besides, I am not alone this time. Alright, stop looking at me like that. I know this is very literary, very Chonabu. Then, let me use Carwin's words instead. You cheated, I refuse to accept it. Let's fight again. I don't believe that there won't be a day which I beat you to the ground. Pooh. Back then, Prince Carwin really said that. Irene bursts into laughter. She suddenly recalls the duels between the brothers back then. Despite possessing an advantage in all aspects, that lazy elder brother always managed to claim victory in the end through ploys. That brat likes to go to the extremes. He refuses to turn back until he hits into a wall, not giving up until he reaches the river Styx. Yet, he is extremely talented and strong, not to mention how blessed with luck he is. If he bumps into a wall, he would probably just bash through it. It also isn't impossible for him to get past the river Styx either. His actions always end in an irreconcilable situation. This time, he really overdid it. When he returns, I will beat some sense into him to show him the prestige of an elder brother. Prestige. You have such a thing? He always ends up calling your name straight though, the elder brother who always steals his younger brother's toys and tidbits. This is my way of letting him know the cruelty of the world so that he can cultivate a competitive spirit and a strong will to fight on. This is the way an elder brother shows his care and concern to his younger brother. Please call me boundless love elder brother, the cold on the outside hot on the inside brother, continued bragging then. You are obviously jealous of your younger brother's luck with women. Roland, have you forgotten that after the establishment of the soul contract, I am able to look into your memories? Communication between souls don't need time. While joking about, Irene who has ingested sufficient nutrients recovers swiftly. In a few short seconds, the frigid nightmare turns into an ice cocoon. In Darso's eyes, I probably just quietly took out a wooden sword and dazed out for a few seconds when a white cocoon suddenly appears in front of me. After coming back to my senses, I touch the ice cocoon lightly. The giant cocoon starts to crack and following which, an illusory battle horse appears before everyone. She is shrouded by an ice mist. Stars could be seen twinkling in both her eyes. Her physical body appears vaguely for a moment and disappears in the next, as though it doesn't belong to this dimension. Starlight shines on her physical body. The moment she stands up, with a slight tap with her hoofs, the ground she steps on turns into solid ice. This is a war horse that doesn't belong to the mortal world. Suddenly, the playful little Irene blows a cold breath towards me. Achoo! Covered in cold air, I subconsciously sneeze. Before I could even react, a layer of white snow stacks on top of me, turning me into a snowman. I shake my head helplessly. Lightly shaking my body, the snow falls into the water, creating a thin layer of ice. On the other hand, a silver plate appears on me. The ice plate created by thin ice isn't very thick, neither is it heavy. It seems like a fragile artwork. Yet, it is firm and durable. On Irene's body, ice magic seems to be turning corporeal. A saddle and many different weapons appear on the mound. Javelin, spear, round shield and a long sword. Those exquisite looking ice weapons are filled with ice magic. Or ornite. Even Darsos who is aware of it beforehand exclaims in shock. As fellow knights, the White Wolf Guards will never forget the nemesis in their imaginations, that legendary order whose members are said to each possess the strength of a gold rank. Your Majesty, I accept your goodwill, but there are things that I still have to do. I will entrust my attendant Rosemary to you. Please bring her to safety. Throwing my future spy Rosemary behind, I delightfully tear through the annoying clothes I am wearing, allowing the ice plate to come into contact with my skin. Even though there are many worries plaguing my mind, somehow I feel relaxed and happy. Due to effects of the soul contract, the ice armor feels extremely warm. It doesn't have the restraining feeling of the ice armor previously. I also feel my body getting slightly lighter. The ice armor actually improves the mobility of its user. While Darsos is still intending to say something, the White Knight has already charged to the entrance with his war horse, leaving behind footprints of ice on the water surface his horse steps on. Darsos shakes his head bitterly. He could only retract his gaze helplessly. Begin the retreat. At this moment, I rush through the streets on my frigid nightmare. I activate my cold barrier, preventing the rain and storm from bothering me. Can you turn into a giant ice dragon? You used to be able to do it, so you should still be able to do it now. Although it is too striking and thus a little dangerous, it would be much faster if we fly there. I can, if you reach legend. On certain aspects, establishing a soul contract with a frigid nightmare is similar to a mage's magic pet contract. The maximum strength of the servant cannot exceed that of his master. Ice Behemoth. Time works just like a butcher's knife. In the past, Lord Roland wasn't that forgetful. Under the commands of the Naga officers, the fishmen before me stretch open several fish nets. It seems that they intend to trip my mount. However, with a light push on the surface, Irene leaps into midair, disregarding the enemy's attempt to intercept us. You didn't have such a venomous tongue in the past. Where did that snow woman big sister with a gentle smile go to? I tossed ice javelins while making a jab at her. The ice javelin rotates in midair in an arc before pinning the Naga spellcaster into the water, following which, a ring of ice explodes, freezing the few Naga guards who dared to step forward to assist her. So that previous me had such an image in your heart? I can turn into the form of a snow woman if you want, but due to my lack in strength, the form I assume will be slightly younger. Are you sure you want to charge riding on a snow woman? Imagining it for a moment, a fully equipped knight riding on a young girl, shouting, "Holy light, that enemy is worth a fight," while using a whip on the young girl's bottom, forcing her to charge ahead. I want to try. No, that's too immoral. Irene, maintain your current form. I suddenly thought that if I were to be seen in that form by others, I probably will never be able to shake off my honorable title as the King of Gentlemen. Uncle Police, that's the guy. Prince Roland, have you forgotten that our memories are shared? Also, the world that you were in previously is too perverted. As our souls are connected, my memory from the other world is also shared with her. That familiar retort left me stunned for a moment before I chuckled. Actually, you can use the keywords Gentleman Alliance and True Love Siblings to search in my memories. Right, in order to protect the underage you, please do not search Beifing. I retract my words. There are indeed perverts in every world. Also, you did it purposely, didn't you? The more you ask me to look, the more curious I would be. I almost turn blind. You must take responsibility. I will take responsibility by introducing you to Beifing. I'm sorry, please do not take responsibility for me. Even while joking about, the Rapitor or a warhorse didn't stop her footsteps. Using her ability to turn the water surface she steps on into ice, she is able to easily avoid the encirclement of the sea folk. Even the fastest seahorse is unable to keep up with her pace. The benefits of our thoughts being connected is that I don't have to be worried about being shaken off the horse. I only have to choose which target to assault and kill. If some powerful offensive magic were to come my way, the protective barrier of the semi-god staff is perfectly suited for this situation. The protection of the Dark God, summon a formless protective barrier which can withstand 200 magic damage, magic equipment damage. Before the protective barrier breaks, the wielder will be immune to all stunning, hexing and any other control type magic. Duration, 10 seconds. Can be used 3 times per day. By the time I use the final barrier of the day to block off a chain frost bolt by a Naga spellcaster, before the arrival of the enemy's flying troops, We have already arrived at the edge of Pearl District. Head to the Church of Law to meet up with everyone else first. They better be alright. Chapter 115, Ice Secret Sword for Experts. Actual battles are the best way to ascertain one's skills. Even if a skill may seem incredible and high tier, if it is unable to prove its worth in an actual battle, then it is useless. The most recent battle I had with Rosemary's, Carlohan, Undead Army is probably the most intense one since my rebirth. As far as I was concerned, it was also the perfect opportunity to test my abilities and determine future routes for development. There were quite a few problems that were revealed through battle. Among them, the most obvious of them all are that I have too many power systems, the absence of a decisive killing move, and the powers and techniques I was using against each and every enemy were a little chaotic. Cultivating both magic and martial arts is often the exclusive right of long-lived species. This isn't only because of the fact that they have plenty of time to squander, allowing them to climb to the summit with both magic and martial arts. Also, this isn't only because of their race talent and stats, which allow them to reach a peak unattainable by those short-lived species. The very core of it is that they have an inheritance of a secret art that allows them to overlay the effects of magic with martial arts. Nightfall Blade and Jade Stab are fearsome top-tier sword skills in the elf tribe. Those warriors don on a light leather armor and brandish their magic swords. They choose the buffs most suited to them and enchant their blades. Years and years of training has ensured that their martial arts would not be inferior to any opponent, and the magic sword that they conceal in their sleeves would often prove to be lethal to their enemies. They are adept at enchanting the magic sword against their enemies. As long as they have prepared in advance, the seemingly coarse and wild but cautious and intelligent Nightfall Blade is a slaughtering machine on the battlefield, capable of facing 100 enemies on its own. On the other hand, the Jade Stink specializes in all types of concealment, such as removing one's presence and anti-detection magic. Facing them in war, you have to prepare for the bizarre situation of your enemies disappearing multiple times. Of course, the precondition is that you would have to first survive their deadly assassination. They are the top-class assassins, the bane of all mages. The Blood Clan's corrupted blood swordsmen and the golden armored warriors are forbidden existences, demon hunters. On the other hand, the cursed spear dancers of the Black Wings are commonly seen badly reputed troops. The Death Knights, who inspire fear in all living beings, could be considered classical troops who possess the advantage of being skilled in both magic and martial arts. Different to the humans' high-tier troops who are reliant on equipment and mounts, these special inheritances often arise in the form of a job advancement. Their unique fighting and training methods are the crystallization of the innumerable eons of the long-lived species. There is basically no chance of an outsider inheriting their legacy. They may not number much, but their appearance on the battlefield is definitely the nightmare of their enemies. Of course, humans have made great efforts on this front. The gold-ranked Mage Knights were the result of their efforts. However, in reality, they were famous for being a useless profession. Not mentioning how it has high requirements on talents. In order to perform magic, the knights are unable to equip heavy armor. Thus, as a close combatant, they were weaker than warriors and holy knights who are of the same power rank. The only magic they could produce is dash, fireball. That's right, the magic knight were most adept at using the three-circle fire magic, fireball. Perhaps, there were results in low-level battles. However, in battles between gold ranks, who would be afraid of a three-circle magic? Proponents of the Mage Knight once argued the 5 fireballs overlapping in a specific location can destroy everything. We don't need any other magic theory with fire mages backing them. As a result, the bizarre 5 fireball divine cult was born. Ultimately, their main flaws were that their magic and martial arts didn't complement one another, and it did not have a clear role in battle. In my opinion, the main reason why the Mage Knights were a failure, even when the personnel who successfully advanced to become Mage Knights didn't exceed 10, the 5 fireball divine cult still refused to admit failure. The primary reason is because their attention has been divided between 2 entirely different fields. They attempt to become both skilled in close combat and long range, and as a result, they were incapable of either. As for the reason why other races were able to successfully advance, is due to their clear goal and specialization they want to pursue. After which, they utilized both martial arts and magic to strive towards their specialization. If it is a skill that doesn't contribute to their goal, even if it proves to be useful, they would choose to not squander time on it. A result of that is the obvious fact that those who successfully train in the two are either powerful close combatants or powerful long-range troops. They weren't so ambitious to become like the Mage Knights, capable of crushing warriors in close combat and fireball-flinging mages in long-range combat. In the end, the Mage Knights would only get crushed by their weaknesses. To specialize, one has to put their specialization as the core of everything to realize their own role and position. Then, utilize their strengths to make up for their weaknesses and make their strengths further the might of their specialization. This is the general theory for warriors with multiple abilities. In that case, for a body like mine which contains 4 kinds of powers, if I were to attempt to create an all-round warrior, I would only end up like the useless Mage Knights. What do I specialize in? How can I use my other abilities to propagate my specialization and complement my weaknesses? Ever since I was revived, I had been thinking about this question. Then, I found my answer. If you have to choose a profession, then a Death Knight who is skilled with soul arts is definitely the most suited for you. If your talent for the Holy Light is 10 points, then it would be 20 points for necromancy and 40 points for swordsmanship. Just through necromancy and swordsmanship, you would surely be able to reach the summit of Death Knights. Didn't you see how the strongest Death Knight, Lionheart, was willing to become your eternal little brother? In the end, your accomplishments in the field of a Death Knight have exceeded all your predecessors and probably no one capable of surpassing you would appear in the future. I am a Holy Knight. Not to mention, I can cast ice magic. Cough. Don't ever tell anyone that your ice magic was taught by me. I can't afford to bear this reputation. If your talent for Holy Light is 10 points, then your talent in ice magic is at most 0.1 points. Back then, my head must have been caught in some doorway for me to accept you as my disciple to teach you ice magic. Let me ask you, ever since you have comprehended the essence of ice, have you learned any new ice magic spell? Of course not. If I had the time, I might as train in my swordsmanship and study undead creation. No matter what, it would be better than investing time in this hopeless ice magic. Just as expected, my straightforward reply caused the furious cat to fly over and bite me. Harlois is still a passable teacher. Even though the students she taught are mostly backstabbers and perverts, her ability in catering the syllabus to her students is still top-notch. Admittedly, the main reason why the eccentrics among the disciples she have taught are increasing is partly due to this advanced personality education. Cough. I should stop speaking. Otherwise, that darned cat will use some unorthodox methods to exact vengeance. It feels horrible to awake with milk poured over me in the morning. Also, the previous time a paper with white fluid was glued onto my hand, I had to spend an entire morning explaining the situation to Ren. However, on the topic of talents, the darned cat has already revealed my greatest aptitude - swordsmanship. Just like how Adam had once ridiculed me, when the other Holy Knights were focused on tanking and utilized their divine arts to strengthen their defense and support, becoming the leader-like figure in the team. The one I was the most skilled in was offensive swordsmanship. After numerous reincarnations, I even surpassed most of the sword saints who prided themselves in their swordsmanship. Without doubt, this is like an ironic joke that left others speechless and left Adam, who was praised for his swordsmanship, aggrieved. A sword saint who is unable to defeat a holy knight in the domain of swordsmanship? Not to mention, one of the tops in the world in the way of the sword? What kind of joke is this? Even as he grew, I also grew along with him. Eventually, I would still stand above him. Perhaps, Adam's greatest regret while he was in the underground world was his inability to defeat me through swordsmanship at the very end. However, this is to be expected. Not mentioning how my talent with the sword is not bad, swordsmanship is an art in itself. When the foundations are brought up to the level of an art form, it becomes a form of comprehension towards the world and life. These things could be washed away by the currents of reincarnation, but picking them up again isn't a difficult task. In a certain sense, I can be considered as a true immortal and a long-lived species. While the other long-lived species are squandering their time to enjoy their 200 years of childhood, I viewed time as precious as life. Just like the other short-lived species, I spent day after day pondering to gain something. To date, The battles and experiences I have gone through probably exceeds that of 10 heroic spirits combined together. When these skills and comprehension settled down, the swordsmanship and profoundness that I have accumulated in 3 lifetimes finally evolved in terms of quality. I do not believe that any sword saint could do the same as me. In my perspective, beastman sword saints are too violent and lack in sentimentality. Elf sword saints, in their pursuit of the utmost of art, neglected the true form of swordsmanship as a cruel killing tool. If the two are to be put together along with their sword skills, perhaps a truly powerful sword saint would emerge. What about the dwarf sword saints and human sword saints? Those dwarves actually dare to call themselves sword saints by their knee chop, rolling blade and mountain splitting strikes. Human sword saints are an even greater joke. 70% of them have identical abilities, not to mention most of them couldn't even produce sword chi without their equipment. I would normally consider them as jokes. In that case, the path for my development is clear. I would specialize in close combat swordsmanship while the other powers of mine would serve as support to supplement me. In a duel between experts standing on the pinnacle, pure swordsmanship would come to a bottleneck. Not mentioning those who are immune to physical attacks, the great demons and giant dragons have enormous bodies with solid defense. It is too difficult to deal with them through the small toothpicks of the sword saints. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to go through all the trouble for Adam's phoenix inheritance, so that he could utilize the flames of the phoenix to complement his swordsmanship. When I had decided to become a close combatant with swordsmanship at the core while using my other powers to supplement it, the road in front of me widens instead. Secret sword. Flowing water. Rapid sword. Ice magic gathers on the ice sword. Under the will of my sword that depicts a flowing river, the ice forms a beautiful ice river, similar to that in my homeland. Thus, I changed its name. Ice secret sword, Moment Glacier. The transparent and clear ice sword is as beautiful as a sword forged of gems. Along the trajectories of the sword, which is reminiscent of a flowing river, the sword chi and frozen air that were released forge a beautiful ice river in midair. As reality and illusion overlap, the water surface and the sea folk before me turn into a part of the river of ice. In the moment of their freezing, the conceited Naga officers were still commanding the fishmen and sea beasts arrogantly. The army of charging fishmen became beautiful ice sculptures, and the flying fishes and waves solidified. In the face of Moment Glacier, no one life could react. Their minds were still stuck in the moment of their freezing. Under the augmentation of ice magic, the secret art which was used to divert the attention of an enemy turns into a powerful AO skill. As far as the eye could see, the countless enemies stretching for 30 meters ahead of me had been completely cleared. On the other hand, the frozen river water had become the best runway for me. The first time combining sword skills with ice magic has already created a might of 1 + 1 greater than 3, even I am surprised. After all, when I was testing it out privately, it didn't have such might. Hey, it's me. If we are competing in the ability of controlling ice magic, even white dragons aren't our opponent. Irene's voice echoes from beneath. Realization strikes me. As a frigid nightmare who stands at the very peak of the creatures of ice and snow, the power of ice and snow that she brings about is several tens of times greater than what I possess as a bronze rank. Also, her control over the ice magic isn't as horrible as mine. When I was executing my technique, she wasn't slacking by the side. She was helping me adjust and manipulate the ice element to complement with my secret sword. This is just like a dual-core CPU working simultaneously, forcibly expanding the might of the skill by multiple folds. Alright, I know that some people will retort that this comparison is not suitable in this world of magic, and that if Irene is the most advanced CPU, I can probably only be considered as the obsolete i386. Just make do with it. This is just an improvised analogy. At this moment, I realize that I have underestimated the usefulness of external tools yet again. My talent in ice magic is pathetic, but if I were to dump this sector to Arabella to settle for me, won't I be able to make up for this flaw perfectly? Similarly, if I were to dump the power of death, power of law and power of holy light to other magic pits to augment, thus creating a few more processors, my combat power might rise exponentially. Harl Ois. Alright, at this moment, I decisively recalled the omniscient one Harl Ois. However, the current Harl Ois only retained her knowledge and skills, She doesn't possess sufficient strength and a suitable body to complement with the attributes, thus she is unable to fulfill my demands. Harloise's 37th patch, regarding the change of colors of her forelimbs, Harloise's 38th patch, a revise of her 3 measurements, must be executed as soon as possible. Right, there's also the Super Miario. I can still add a few more edits along with it. It should be interesting to see her grow up when she eats a mushroom and throw fireballs after she eats a flower. Hee. However, this isn't the moment for my thoughts to be wandering. I am not too far from my destination. While charging in solo is exhilarating, but at the same time, I am exposing myself to the entire battlefield. If their leaders aren't fools, they would surely send elites in to contain me. Just as I expected, right after charging past the street corner, 2 sea giants suddenly appear before me. The enormous sea giants are the height of the city walls. Even in the giant family, they could be considered to be of tall stature. Wielding rusty anchors with their extraordinary strength, mature sea giants possess at least the strength of a gold rank. In the water, when their ability to induce tsunamis come into play, even giant dragons dare not to compete physically with them. Their greatest hobby, other than dueling with sea dragons, is to sink ships. The ships which had fallen under their hands are innumerable. However, the reason for their attacks is ridiculously simple. As it is impossible to start a furnace to smith underwater, it is difficult to obtain a metal weapon. In order to obtain a good weapon, the sea giants set their eyes on the giant tankers of huge ships. At the same time, they could have an additional meal comprising sailors. When the other races became aware of this fact, they decided to just bring a giant battle anchor to serve as payment for the road. However, the delighted sea giants first accepted the bribe before dismantling their anchor as a spare, then proceeding on to have them as an additional snack. The reason why we don't hold promises? Ha, little thing. Do you communicate with barnacles and seaweeds? Neither do we. This is the lesson a certain intelligent navigator learnt with his life after trying to bribe the sea giants with a giant anchor for safe passageway. The thick-skinned giants aren't easy to deal with. Not to mention, the sons of the sea giants, are giants among the giants. The 2 giants stands by one another, blocking the entire street with their giant figures. As they stomp their legs, a furious wave is generated. If one were to be struck by those waves, their body would definitely end up crushed. On the street behind them, the Church of Law is glowing with a radiant light of God. Countless corpses of the sea folk hung on formless gallows. As a church of a true God under the God's jurisdiction, until the entire city falls, the church will not fall. For them who have piled up the sins of war and genocide to charge into the Church of the God of Law, should I say that they are backwards or that they are heartless? Going by the rules of the War of Gods, when the city finally changed hands, the idol would probably be sullied. However, I didn't have the leisure to be worried about my idol now. The giants are already before me. Little insect, don't move. Let rabbit trample you to death. A knight? Yet another iron can. Vines don't like cans stuck in teeth. Getting obstructed would mean my demise. However, I already had no other alternatives. Since there isn't any other road. Upon meeting on a narrow path, the brave will emerge victorious. The ice dragon lance rotates vigorously by my side. At the same, Irene picks up speed. I flick my sword up from the water, generating huge waterworks. Pointless tricks of an useless insect. Scream miserably for Rabba. Rabba loves watching little insects' final performance. Sea giants are far nimbler in the sea than on land. Rabba lightly grabs and a wall of waves appears before him to block my charge. Following which, the moment the tip of the lance barely pierces through the wall, the giant has already grabbed the tip of the rapidly rotating dragon lance. Although the rotating lance has cut his left hand, the massive anchor on his right hand immediately comes smashing down on where the knight is. Done already? How boring. Boom. An anchor weighing several tons crashes downwards, causing crushed stones and snowflakes to be sent flying. The entire street tremors. Yee, where's little insect? When the giants realize that their target has gone missing, it is already too late. After concealing myself in the waterworks I generated, I threw the dragon lance and right now, I am already by the side of the giants. Secret sword, blade storm. As I started to rotate, the floating snow woman lolly augments my skill, thus creating a whirlwind of snow and ice. Secret sword, blade storm. Using this skill, you will turn into a fast-rotating storm of blades. The rotating swords and sword chi will severely damage all enemy land troops in the surroundings. At the beginning, it was merely an ordinary blade storm. However, when the power of ice and snow on both of blades start to seep out, the entire world begins to snow. Under the permeation of snow and ice into the formless sword chi, they became ice blades and ice thorns, thus increasing the might of the blade storm explosively. Even so, this was only the beginning. What that would turn out to be even more lethal was an unexpected surprise. At this moment, a continuous stream of water is pulled into the whirlwind. Then, under the rapid rotation of the whirlwind of ice, they form ice cubes and ice vectors which were then thrown out violently. Somehow, I have become a top that tosses out ice arrows continuously. Under the full support of Irene, who is assuming her snow woman form in midair, every single ice blade that flings out possesses the strength of an ice arrow thrown out by a silver ice mage with his full might. Individually, they may not be powerful. However, when their quantity is sufficient to cloak everyone's vision, the blade storm has already evolved from a Neo-Legend secret sword to a Saint Magic secret sword with astonishing destructive might. The whirlwind of ice continues to turn frenziedly. Be it buildings, thin ice, lampposts or whatever they once were, they were reduced to fragments in an instant. By the time I stop dizzily, there isn't anything left in my surroundings. The two incomparably powerful sea giants have become a hornet's nests. Thousands of ice arrows are embedded in their flesh. The sea giant farther away is still barely living. However, the closer sea giant had innumerable ice arrows lodged into his head. Clearly, he can't be alive. When the giants fell onto the ground with a large thump and I was weakly gasping for air on the ground, Crows has already arrived. Great, you are unharmed, my lord. Everything is in chaos now, what should we do? Grinding my teeth, I struggled to my feet. At the present moment, every delayed second means greater danger. Assemble everyone, bring away all of our luggage and rations. Let's slaughter our way out. Under the will of my sword that depicts a flowing river, the ice forms a beautiful ice river, similar to that in my homeland. Thus, I changed its name. TL, a little hard to explain but it is like imagery. The image in his mind is a flowing river, so his sword also takes such a form. Chapter 116, Judgment and Assassin. When the Aurora Knight equipped in a white helmet and plate charged out from the sparring field, a large portion of the nobles looked at him as though they were looking at a fool. In their eyes, this knight princess who hadn't listened to the warnings of others was already a dead person. There were only a few people who vaguely felt that the knight wasn't the type who would die young. The next time they meet, many things would probably change. As the retreat progressed in an orderly manner, Hermit secretly pulled to one side a White Wolf Guard officer that was in charge of facilitating the retreat. If that female knight were to bypass the encirclement, find an opportunity to kill her, I will take responsibility for it. As the trusted advisor of the All-End Emperor Darsos, one of the masterminds in the shadows, Hermit's determination is resolute on this matter. Despite being in a desperate situation, the female knight charged out with a smile. This made him recall the legendary Will of the Mist and its previous glory. She was obviously the princess of a small country, which put her in a disadvantageous situation, yet she had gained the upper hand through a series of clashes. He began to suspect that the other party might have the wit and strength to break out of this hopeless situation. Moreover, the reappearance of the Aurora Knight could be a sign that the various powerful troops of the Mist Country are gradually awakening. It feels as though there is a possibility that the glorious history of the Mist will leap out from the past and appear in the present. If the Mist Country were to rise up once again and the 7 countries of the Northern Lands unite as one, perhaps that sovereign of the Northern Lands would be able to conquer the North once more. Not to mention, his own emperor is infatuated with her. 10 years of ceasefire made that target an even more crucial one. In Hermit's mind, this kind of unique existence is unneeded from the very start. Perhaps, he might be doing something excessive, or maybe he is being despicable. Maybe, the emperor would be enraged and punish him severely, or perhaps the leakage of such news would result in a chain reaction. However, as the subordinate of the All-End Empire's emperor, he feels that the descendant of the Mist would prove to be a threat in the future. He has to make full use of this opportunity to get rid of this variable. Even if he would be punished as a result, it would be worth it. This is his undying loyalty towards his lord and his country. No matter what, I find that woman is simply too dangerous. I am unable to find the slightest bit of goodwill towards her. Killing the beloved woman of the emperor on my own whim would probably cause him to turn against me. When the scandal that I killed the princess of another country during a disaster spreads, I might have to carry the blame of scheming against our allies right before the sacred war. Perhaps, I will be thought of as a fool who can only scheme internally against my own comrades by the people and would be dealt with harshly. However, as long as this is beneficial for the country and Darsos, even if other people are unable to comprehend my actions, what does it count as for me to be sent to the gallows? From a certain viewpoint, this intelligence head whose eyes are always squinting and carries a scheming smile may look like a playboy, but his loyalty to the All-Land Empire and the Emperor has already reached the level where he is willing to die to protect them. Just because he feels that the person would be a threat to the All-Land Empire's ambitions, he decided to get rid of her. This is a very simple and logical thought process. Or perhaps, it might be the conclusion he came up with after analyzing countless intelligence, or maybe it is just intuition. However, when the intelligence head hermit makes up his mind, he would make an immediate move. The rest of you will go as well. If the White Wolf guards aren't in a good position to strike, you all will complete the task in their stead. If you all do not spot the target leaving the city, help the guards to hold the final defense line. If you all don't accomplish this mission, do not return. Seemingly muttering a few words to himself, a few shadows disappear into the distant. The spies have begun to share intelligence on the target, preparing for their dishonorable assassination. Then, when he turned around to get on top of the human-powered carriage to leave, he found Darsos already waiting on it. By his side, in the hands of a mage, a display was playing the video recorded by a magi. As he glances at it, fright paralyzes him and cold sweat drenches his back. The video that is playing shows the words he spoke just a short moment ago: "Find an opportunity to kill her." At this moment, Darso slumps like a wooden puppet with a stoic face. However, Hermit is aware that this is the expression he displays when he is incensed. He lowers his head, prepared to face the wrath of his liege, but he only hears a question with suppressed powerful emotions beneath the voice. Blood Mage Emperor Marcelet should have been mobilized already. Help me convey a mission to him in my stead. Ask him to head to my underground chamber through my bedroom to retrieve that old fool who should be on the verge of drowning. After saying those words, he throws over a blood dragon head insignia to him. This was the only token of authority that the bloodthirsty semi-god obeys. What is this situation? He didn't intend to punish me? Hesitation appeared on Hermit's face. This mission has to be completed in utmost secrecy. Thus, if you were to meet anyone on the road, silence them. Right, emphasize to Marcelet that if the old fool seems like he is scheming something, silence him before he can do anything. In that instant, Hermit understands. The current situation is chaotic, and only supreme experts are able to move casually in the battlefield. Marcelet, who had participated in the rebellion, is capable of flitting around like an apparition. Even if he were to bring someone along, it is impossible for him to be noticed. This isn't a mission to save the old emperor. Rather, he is giving him a chance to kill the princess through the hands of another. Hermit, did you still remember what our dreams were? I want to make Holland stand at the peak of the world. Compared to this, what does a woman count as? He continues to talk about official matters, not mentioning the least about the assassination on the princess. However, those words that he squeezes out from the gaps of his teeth proves his determination. The one who signed the contract is Darsos himself. Under the intentional or unintentional neglect of both parties, they only limited the prevention of acts of hostility to countries. They forgot about the safety of themselves as individuals. If a subordinate of theirs were to act on their own whim, if the semi-god were to accidentally kill someone while in the midst of carrying out his mission, it is impossible for the contract to intervene with such a curved ball. Thus, in the eyes of the contract and Darsos himself, he isn't the one making the call. It is all the doing of his subordinate. Since she is destined not to be mine, then the only thing she could be is my enemy. If I cannot attain her, then nobody else can. Hermit is unable to hear the voice in the depths of the Emperor's heart, but the trust Darsos holds towards him, His willingness to sacrifice his everything for the greater justice makes the usually dispassionate hermit to feel moved. That is the reason why he respects and serves him loyally. Yes, Your Majesty, I will not let you down. Dash, ding. You have killed a sea giant beyond your power rank. 198 fate points is awarded. You have received the item Sea Giant's Soul and Sea Giant's Melee Socks. Sea Giant's Soul, upon usage, the soul will possess your body. Strength +5, agility -2. The user will gain the ability to breathe underwater and control giant waves. As for the Sea Giant's Melee Socks, you can try using it as a raincoat. It is definitely waterproof. It can even boost a few of your stats, as long as you don't have a nose or your nose is retarded, so that you won't die from the stench. Ding! Congratulations for creating a Saint Magic Secret Sword, Polar Blade Storm. Your physical body has broken through its limits. Strength +1, agility +1. General Legend Secret Sword, Blade Storm. Using this skill, you will turn into a fast rotating storm of blades. The rotating swords and sword chi will severely damage all enemy land troops in the surroundings. Prerequisites: 20 strength, 10 agility, 15 stamina. Saint Magic Secret Sword, Polar Blade Storm. This skill is an upgrade of Blade Storm. Only a sword saint who has fully mastered Blade Storm can try to execute this skill. Using this skill, you will turn into a fast rotating ice vortex of blades. The rotating swords and sword chi is only the first barrage of attacks. What would terminate your enemies are the lethal cold air and the ice arrows. This technique is extremely powerful and has a large AO. Prerequisites: 22 strength, 15 agility, 20 stamina. The complete version of Polar Blade Storm can only be executed with the assistance of Frigid Nightmare Irene. The system notice sounds out numerous times, bringing me great delight. I am more interested in the race talent that I had unlocked upon reaching 20 for my agility. However, I didn't have the time to be admiring it. The strong sense of giddiness and tiredness made it difficult for me to straighten my body. Although the upgraded Blade Storm holds significantly greater destructive power, the requirements to execute it also increase significantly. I have barely reached the basic prerequisites for it, though there is one hidden prerequisite that I am unable to ignore no matter what. Power rank. Secret swords aren't better just because they are stronger. The most important factor is still suitability. As a bronze rank, despite my high stats and strong physical body, it is already pushing it for me to execute the Legend Secret Sword. If I were to execute Polar Blade Storm, which is a rank higher than Blade Storm, it is as good as suicide in my current state. Through the quantification of the system, the basic information of the sword skill is apparent. A strength type secret sword requires the strength stat to boost its destructive prowess, while agility is used to maintain the attack speed, accuracy and balance of the attack. Stamina mainly deals with the rebound one incurs from the skill, so that they won't die from executing it. As for intelligence, that is the requirement on the magic aspect. Every time my level or power rank increases, it increases in the quantity my basic stats. The current me, even though I barely meet the basic requirements in terms of quality, from the quantity side, I am still lacking severely. Thus, both of my hands ended up getting cut by the sword chi. Even with Irene serving as an external magic power vault, my minute amount of magic power is sapped in an instant. I feel a splitting headache from the lack of stamina as well as an urge to puke. The main reasons why I didn't die are because of Irene dealing with the rebound on the magic side in my stead and my high level of expertise in swordsmanship. Even after sacrificing so much, the Polar Blade Storm still wasn't at its complete might. Under the limitations of my physical body, the strength of the Blade Storm and its duration is barely a third of the original. Its evolved version, the Saint Magic Secret Sword, probably doesn't hold a tenth of the might of the complete version. Otherwise, struck by a Saint Secret Sword in close proximity, the result would just not end up with one killed and one wounded. Even with the unexpected augmentation by the river water, the sea giant with the strength of a human gold rank would definitely be killed in an instant. For the Magic Secret Sword to be truly feasible in battle, I cannot slacken on my swordsmanship and my magic. From the looks of my current situation, I can only wait for my power rank to advance for my swordsmanship to improve. What is troubling is my ice magic. When I return, I will immediately activate Harlois's patches. However, what is most important now is not the future or the potential strength of the complete polar blade storm. If I am unable to get by this situation, there probably would not be any future for me. Under Crow's assistance. Alright, it is an assistance at proximity. Let us ignore the mysterious furious glares in the distant. Crows, can you allow me to walk on my own? That won't do, Lord. Don't push yourself. I am not pushing myself. Your clothes are already wet. Please consider your current identity as a female. You coming to me at such proximity is what that is called pushing yourself. Despite being an elf, to possess such an explosive figure, is this scientific? Some unscientific parts of yours are in contact with me, not to mention how your clothes are clinging to them. You are tempting me to commit a crime. Do you understand that? The smell of the natural herbs in your hair causes my will to waver even more. Do you believe it? Not far away, Dire and Muse are already crying from envy. Have you noticed it yet? Most importantly, upon recalling that your soul is a male, I really feel like finding a pillar to knock against it. Can you comprehend that? Alright, before the resentments became corporeal, we arrived at the Church of Law. The church is emitting a faint silvery light. That seemingly gentle glow blocks away the river water carrying God power that floods every inch of the city. Crows informs me that the sea giants aren't there to intercept me. Rather, they are obeying orders to stop all living beings who intend to enter the church to seek asylum. Before I came here, they had already crossed blows with crows multiple times. There are many small groups like this among the sea folk. Their goal is to prevent important figures from hiding in the church to catch their breath. Actually, the sea folk do not intend to attack the church forcibly, and there isn't a need for them to as well. A church is a territory of God, and the territory of God is immune to all invasions. This is the authority of a true God. However, following the fall of the city and the death of the God's worshippers, the Kajersi branch church would soon find itself lacking sufficient worshippers to be considered as a church. If so, they don't even have to strike with their own hands. As soon as that happens, they just have to drown the church with the river water. The idol would also serve as an excellent tribute to the malevolent gods of chaos. Even though the numerous sea folk who invaded the church on their own whim are hung on formless gallows, the interior of the church is still a mess. However, what reassured me is the numerous carts placed in the main hall. Those aren't god equipment or monetary wealth. They are the most important things we require right now. Rations, medicines and other necessary supplies. It is impossible for us to bring a lot of rations to a fight. The rations left in the underwater base are those we brought along in our personal inventory. Those are insufficient to sustain the engineers and the rest. Thus, after returning to the surface, I had crows gather food rations secretly. If contracts are perfect and laws can stop every single crime, this world would have long become a land of peace. On a territory where many are hostile to us, how could we sleep in peace? From the very beginning, I had already made preparations for our retreat. As long as we are able to bring those neatly packed cards of rations to the underwater base, it would give us the option of attacking and defending. It would be a strategic victory. Are you all ready? Yes, my lord. We can set forth at any time. If it wasn't for you insisting for me to change my clothes, we could have set off 10 minutes earlier. HMPH, Lord is such a conservative man. Alright, ignoring the cute complaints which induce an urge to bash my head on the wall, if I didn't force you to change out of those dripping wet clothes, even if those gentlemen with unique tastes won't do anything to you, it is hard to say the same about the resentful Ren and the others. Ren, her figure is just slightly better than yours. Do you have to look at her so enviously? You should be worried about your back. Look, Kelly is already jotting something on her little notebook. A new remedial lesson is in the midst of being born. Anyway, it isn't the time to be thinking about such things. Looking at the elites of the sea folk gathering outside once again, I made up my mind. Then, let's begin the Great Judgment. Crows holds up the semi-god equipment codex in her hands and declares loudly, I, the Archbishop of the Church of Law All Branch Crows. Ainta, her full name which has been forgotten by everyone else, declares that there are sinners running rampant, a genocide is taking place and a war of injustice is occurring before me. I swear upon the name of my God, Wumians, that I will judge all sins in this city. Scattered page of Codex, a clone of the God equipment, has been strengthened significantly after the ascension of the God of Law, Faith in Law, 169 2000ths. The belief from 1,000 people in a week allows it to increase by 1 point every week, and the cap is 50 points every month. When the points reach 1,000, 1,000 points can be expended to replicate a scattered page. Effect 1,3, Negligible. Effect 2, Great Judgment, active, requires 100 Faith in Law to activate, and consumes 1 point every minute after activation. After its activation, everyone in the city will be cast with a legend rank level judgment spell, and they will be judged based on their actions in the last 3 hours. If guilty, their freedom will be restricted and debuffs such as intangible cuffs and weapon seal will be inflicted on them. Under the effects of Great Judgment, the effectiveness of Incantation of Law will be multiplied several folds and the power rank of law enforcers will be increased by 1. The requirements for usage: the laws in the city are in chaos. Criminals are doing as they please and the city is on the verge of destruction. Following her declaration, the silver light of order turns into a pillar of light and expands. Countless shouts of astonishment overwhelm the city. Apparently, the sea folk are distressed by this spell which they had never seen before. Although we are unable to save most of them, if we restrain the enemies like this, perhaps more civilians would be able to escape. There is a limit to the duration of Great Judgment. Let's set off now. We have to reach the underwater base before its effects run out. At this moment, 2 frigid nightmares have already turned into heavyweight ice spores suited for charges. The escape team assumes the formation of an arrow with Ren and I standing at the very forefront. With my power rank raised by the effects of Great Judgment, I regained a little bit of my stamina and mana. Smacking my mount, I rush forward to break through the encirclement. There are still 68 faith points, so we should have 68 minutes. Normally, the journey would take around 40 minutes. I'm not sure whether we have enough time. Forget it, rather than dwelling on it, let's leave it to fate instead. It is impossible for me to fathom that many obstacles would stand in our way. Other than the all-end semi-god mage who is in the midst of carrying out his secret mission in the rain, at our destination, the battle between the semi-god Hydra and the heroic spirit is getting more and more heated and savage. The sky has been torn asunder and the river is parted into 2. Water flowing back in before it is parted yet again. The sea folk caught in the battle disintegrate instantaneously, leaving no corpses behind. On the path the ration carts have to pass through to reach the underwater base, the 9-headed giant blocks the path. Hurry up! We would be safe once we get to the base. Breaking through the encirclement around the church, we didn't expect that the giant creature would be standing in our path. Somehow, I feel that things won't go that smoothly. Touch wood. Darn cat. Shut up. Otherwise, I will learn from those witches and turn you into a crow so that you can only caw all day long. It sounds like a good idea. Triple transformation pet elf. That will be you, Harl Ois. Chapter 117, Dragon Hunting. A sacred silver light engulfs the entire city. In the Great Judgment, the sea folk who are busy annihilating the remaining all-end forces finally meet with trouble. Along with Crow's declaration to judge, a silver pillar of light emits rays of light that represent order. Every invader who had turned red from the judgment would be struck by a ray of light and restrictions would be forced upon them by the power of law. Depending on their crimes, some of them would have their area of movement restricted, some of them would have their weapons confiscated, some of them would be shackled, and some of them would find themselves sanctioned by all 3. There are multiple kinds of shackles. The most commonly seen one is the handcuffs. For those whose crimes are severe, leg irons would be added. For those who went too far, it isn't impossible for their entire body to be laden with heavy metal balls. As this is an AO judgment by a replica semi-god equipment and the only thing that is expended is the stored up faith in it, the restraints on each individual target isn't really drastic. Also, the material for the handcuffs isn't not stronger than unrefined iron, so any beastman warrior should be able to break out of it easily. Perhaps, to true experts, this may not mean much. However, to the low-tier fishmen, this could prove to be deadly. In every army, the pawns always number the most. In the invading army of the sea folk, there is an astronomical number of low-tier fishmen. In this kind of situation, they are the main power that causes the greatest destruction to the city. However, when their weak bodies are bound by metal chains, handcuffs and metal balls, not many of them retain the ability to move. An estimation after the event shows that the hour of restraint allowed at least 70 to 80,000 civilians to escape. To the warriors, the significance of the Great Judgment is even greater. In the crossing of blows between two warriors, if one of them were to be restrained suddenly, even just for 0.1 of a second, it could be a determining factor to their duel. This is the might of an army-level strategic forbidden spell. The spell contains both magic and divine arts. Perhaps, it might be completely ineffective against semi-god and myth experts. However, if it were to appear on a battlefield, it would be able to turn the tides of it. What the two Chaos Gods did was a country-level, permanent type, strategic forbidden spell. The Blessing of the Sea God, City of Rain Felasi. Army level and country level are just a type of classification towards extreme magic. It doesn't show which is superior to which. For example, the Icon of Emperor Yongai might only be army level, but it is capable of wiping away an entire city and convert the land hundreds of miles around the city into an ice field. This is much stronger than most of the country level forbidden spells. The greatest difference between the two is probably its duration and AO. An army level forbidden spell normally has a short period of effectiveness. On the other hand, the City of Rain, despite only changing the environment and not causing any direct damage, its duration of effectiveness is probably eternal. However, this is also the reason why heavy prices and sacrifices has to be made to cast a country-level forbidden spell, thus causing it to not be commonly seen in history. This time, the sea folk and the gods have put so much on stake, so their ultimate goal definitely won't just be a plot of land. The dark clouds in the sky will slowly spread and the City of Rain will gradually expand as time passes. In the area under the effects of the forbidden spell, other than the dry areas designated by the caster of the spell, all land will become new territory for the City of Rain. Although the rate of expansion is slow, as long as the spellcaster and the source of power for the spell, the water elemental goddess, doesn't die, the expansion will not stop. This will prove to be a major source of trouble for Holland. It is very probable that countless seafolk are on their way here now. As their territory continues to expand and new tribes settle here, the City of Rain will eventually become the country of the seafolk. This is just like the cancer cells on a cancer patient. The longer you wait, the more deadly it would be when it strikes. Thus, when I noticed the interference from gods and the effects of the forbidden spell, divine art, I immediately gave up on the idea of turning the tables against them. The only way to turn the tables right now is to kill the spellcaster of the forbidden spell. Not mentioning how the spellcaster wouldn't be so silly as to not escape to a location where she would be absolutely safe. Even if she were to appear before us now, the goddess spellcaster is not someone I could deal with now. The Great Judgment of the Law faction may be powerful, but it is more of a support army level forbidden spell. Its effects against the enemies aren't really considerable. Rather, its most powerful effect is its ability to pull up the strength of law enforcers by one power rank as well as multiplying the effectiveness of law incantations. However, without sufficient law jobs here, the true might of the forbidden spell cannot be displayed. This was also the main model in mind when it was being designed. Perhaps, it might mean nothing now, but the fact that this forbidden spell, which has strict requirements for usage, could be activated through a replica of the god equipment means that as long as every city has some law jobs in the future, all empires and races would have to reevaluate the risks and losses they would incur before starting a war. When this fact becomes acknowledged by the world, there would be a surge in law jobs in small and weak countries, thus propagating the rise of the law faction from another direction. When the law faction finally rises up and the fact that it is effective on order life forms who have overstepped the boundaries of law and that chaos life forms are capable of wielding the power of law are revealed, perhaps it would be time for this new rising power in the order faction to reveal its intention to become a neutral faction. Due to this, in order to obtain the best results in my advertisement, I have intended to find an ideal opportunity for it to display its might rather than using it on this battlefield on the faction which is destined for loss, turning it into an additional glory on the crown of the victors. However, I didn't expect that the usage of the forbidden spell, which is fated to contribute little to our goal, would bring about unexpected gains. The 9 heads of the roaring semi-god Hydra roars. He is frenziedly spitting venom, flames, ice and lightning, but yet, he is unable to strike the agile opponent before him. The Dragon Slayer Bastler flits in and out of existence in midair. Every time he appears, the floating dragon slaying spear would crush one of the dragon heads. Even though a new one would quickly grow out due to the Hydra's incredible regeneration ability, the blind spot created by the loss of a head allows the dragon slaying sword to destroy another one. Even though the Hydra would regenerate a new one within seconds as well, Bastler would seek his next target without second thoughts. He knows that when his dragon sealing abilities take effect, the Hydra's regeneration ability will no longer be limitless. The Hydra roars angrily, but he is unable to escape from his shackles. That bizarre shackles that tightens around him prevents him from transmogrifying and severs the connection between him and the river water. If he were to expend himself at this rate, his regeneration ability would be sapped dry in a matter of time. The Hydra roars angrily, as well as fearfully. As an ancient sea monster, he could vaguely see his end. For the scale of the battle between two equal opponents to fall towards one side, credit has to be attributed to the Great Judgment, which was activated 40 to 50 minutes ago. Actually, at the start of the battle, the Hydra held the upper hand. Due to the activation of the forbidden spell by the malevolent gods of chaos, Bastler was forced to strike in advance, thus losing the advantage to initiate a sneak attack on his prey. Naturally, he fell into a disadvantageous position. However, when that silver light of order descends, the situation reverses. Currently, massive chains bind the body of the nine-headed dragon. Surprisingly, its gigantic body is unable to break through those chains, which are supposed to be incredibly weak. The chains are radiating a dark gold light. Runes and magic formations that repress dragons could be seen vaguely appearing on it. It is clear that the chains have become a top-tier dragon-slaying tool. Looking at that bizarre sight before me, I was stunned for a moment before coming to a realization. I coincidentally discovered the reason why Dragon Slayer Bastler is nearly invincible against dragons. Even the tallest buildings are built from the lowest foundations. Before Bastler became a heroic spirit, he was a normal wood elf ranger, but he advanced to become a Nightfall Blader. Nightfall Bladers are adept at enchanting their equipment to counteract their opponent's strengths and attribute. It seems that even now, Bastler still remains as a Nightfall Blader. He still specializes in enchanting his own equipment, just that the enchantment he uses possesses dragon slaying effects, an enchantment normal Nightfall Bladers are unable to wield. That is also the reason why he always has a large bunch of dragon slaying equipment with him. If so, the reason why the situation developed to its current state is apparent. When the giant chains and shackles fall from the sky, Bastler, who has overcame innumerable hopeless situations, didn't let this golden opportunity slip by. He immediately used his abilities to enchant dragon sealing, dragon binding and dragon slaying effects on it, thus forcibly converting the giant chains which the Hydra could easily disintegrate into a godly weapon that could bind a semi-god dragon, not to mention the fact that the chains are already around the Hydra's massive body. No matter who he is, I, Bastler, thank him. The scales of the battle falls completely towards one side. Bastler made use of this opportunity to conduct a series of savage assaults against him, and it seems that the Hydra is already on the verge of dying. Charging all the way here, our group managed to witness such an incredible sight. Even when bound tightly, the savage nine-headed dragon before us should not be underestimated. This mountain-like giant beast occupies half of the entire river by himself. Every time a dragon head fails to break free of its shackles and crashes onto the ground, a powerful shock wave would cause the surroundings to tremor. Also, the dragon breaths from the dragon heads travel far and wide, easily devastating the green mountains in the distance. Bastler, who holds the upper hand, is even more impressive. With a casual wave of his hand, the sword by his waist floats in midair for a moment before enlarging into a massive dragon-slaying blade. Magic runes that represent dragon-slaying flash on the sword. As the gigantic blade comes surging down, venomous blood spurts out of the gigantic dragon head as it falls into the river. Honestly, in the face of such a battle, I really want to just turn around and leave. Given our current strength, if we were thrown into such a fight between top-tier powers, we would end up dead from the shock waves alone. However, the Hydra's gigantic body is blocking the road to the underwater base. There is nowhere we could retreat to now. Wait for Bastler to emerge victorious. It is too hard to tell who would win. There are only 20 minutes left to the Great Judgment, and when the time runs out, all of the sinner-binding shackles will disappear immediately. Regardless of what Bastler does, when the enchanted weapon disappears, the effects of the enchantment will also dissipate. Thus, the Hydra would regain his freedom. Hope that 20 minutes would be sufficient for him to end this battle. For a battle between semi-gods, if their strength are around the same level, it is possible for them to fight for several years straight. If the Hydra was so easy to deal with, 40 to 50 minutes should have been more than sufficient for Bastler to kill him. Due to his powerful regeneration race talent, the nine-headed dragon emperor had been dubbed by many as the master of prolonged battle. Staring at the carts behind, I silently pull out my sword. However, I didn't have the intention of allowing any of the others to join in the battle. Under such circumstances, even though the classical saying depicts that the brave one would emerge victorious when two people meet on a narrow path, in reality, the both of them have to be at least around the same strength. Otherwise, the sacrifice of the brave would just end up meaningless. Getting involved in a battle of this level would mean certain death. Thus, I could only think of a way to avoid it. This is a demanding trial on my eye for discernment, battle experience and flexibility. Currently, our strongest fighting force is Kuros, who is Saint rank under the augmentation of the forbidden spell. However, this isn't something he, who has never undergone a fight between semi-gods, can interfere in. Charge! Let's get rid of that evil dragon. That enemy is worthy of a battle. Just when I was still thinking of a solution, someone seems to have misunderstood my action of drawing my sword. The action seems to have given her courage. Ren smacks her horse and rushes forward. Damn it! Stop creating death flags. Hurry up and return. There is a reason for Ren's overconfidence. Ren has risen to silver rank under the effects of the system's gold fingers. After receiving her frigid nightmare, she barely crosses the boundaries to become a gold rank. Then, under the forbidden spell, she gains the strength of a legend, and the overwhelming power within her that she has never felt before made her feel invincible. Not to mention, slaughtering those powerful sea folk on the way here built up her confidence. However, in my opinion, any silver veteran would be capable to dealing with this inexperienced legend easily. Just as I rush forward to stop her, a blood-red figure blocks my path. He is a red-robed mage. Despite the silver hair, his face is red like an infant's. There is a kind and warm smile on his face, and he looks like an amiable elderly. A courageous and mighty legender or knight, as expected of the great knight princess. I am All-End Empire Advisor Marcelet. Under the orders of the Emperor, I have came to protect the princess. Allow me to lend her my strength. Also, I could make use of this opportunity to avenge Deimos. Raising his staff, crimson red light shines on both us and the enemy. Under the effects of bloodthirst, Ren charges with greater speed and might towards the nine-headed dragon. On the other hand, the attack directed towards the nine-headed dragon is a vile blood drain curse. The dragon head which the Hydra is trying to regrow spurts out a large amount of blood and the regeneration fails. Blood Mage Emperor Marcelet? Why would he be here? Any other person would think that he is a kind person. However, I instinctively felt guarded and alarmed by his actions. This All-End Empire Advisors has always kept a low profile and maintained the image of a good person before others. However, history has exposed his true face as an uncontrollable bloodthirsty maniac. Just as mentioned previously, mages who train in the art of unorthodox water magic, blood magic, would become bloodthirsty. Marcelet is already at the stage of viewing other life forms as living mobile blood bank. Personally, he favors the blood of females and infants. The crimes he has committed are innumerable and unpardonable. Even sentencing him to death 100 times would be insufficient for him to pay for his sins. As for his claim to avenge Deimos, that is even greater bullshit. Indeed, when the Hydra first appeared here, he killed the dragon hunter Deimos and severely wounded Marcelet, who was attacking the sea folk from the fleet. However, in history, they were both mortal enemies. The reason why Marcelet was willing to cultivate in the art of the depraved blood magic was to exact vengeance on Deimos. He should have been happy over his demise. For a bloodthirsty demon to suddenly spout a bunch of lies, it immediately heightens my wariness against him. At this moment, Ren is already at the edge of the battlefield between the semi-gods. Darn it! Scram! P.S. Previously, when he said he is using close combat magic sword as his primary choice of offense, it doesn't mean that he is giving up on the others. The king of undead Lich, the envoy of the god of law, the Winter Knight of the Northern Country and the legendary Holy Knight Prince Roland. Every one of these jobs are a source of power, his identity as well as the companions beside him. In order to realize their ultimate aim of reversing fate, every single one of this identity is important, so naturally, he cannot give up on any one of them. Really sorry for changing the terminologies now and there. Caps, I know I keep saying that I would go back and edit the previous ones to standardize. Even though I haven't got to doing it yet, I really intend to do so, but I have been a bit busy recently, a bit of procrastination as well. Well, if anyone is interested in doing it, feel free to apply and look for me. Chapter 118, Two Liars, the Guardian of the Forest. Those fellows popped out from nowhere and said that they would protect your family's forest. If you chase them away, not only will you lose your forest, you will also lose your villa and your old horse. What kind of protector is this? They are obviously Bandit Stash, a certain unfortunate fellow who lost his family's forest and villa. As a nature conservation extremists, the reputation of the Druids has always been bad. As the ex-member of the Guardian of the Forest, an extremist Druid organization which propagates for the protection of nature, although she has been trying to conceal and escape from her past, I could still deduce a lot of things from her. From her intentional heavy makeup, she is probably a wanted criminal on the surface. Not to mention, she does seem to behave a little guiltily. Also, judging by her skills, the bounty on her is probably quite high. However, I could only thank her for her rich battle experience which forged her intuitive reaction speed. Crows. Under the buff of the Blood Mage, the rascal has already charged to the edge of the battle between the semi-gods. My subconscious shouting of Crows' name became the only straw of hope left for her survival. Fortunately, Crows didn't let me down. Just by calling her name, she knew what to do. Lightning Prison. As an extension of one of the four great basic elements, wind magic, lightning magic has been known for its high offensive capabilities. Along with fire magic, they have been dubbed as the two great cannon towers. However, different from fire magic's destructive abilities and great AO, lightning magic is able to strike with high speed at high frequencies and is well known for its sudden attacks. Different from elemental mages who directly control the power of elements, Druids have two different ways to controlling lightning. One of it is to directly control it just like the other elemental mages, while the other one is to communicate with nature and use it as a medium to adjust the weather to summon lightning. Although the usage of the latter may be inconvenient, not to mention the numerous weaknesses such as requiring pre-calculation and such, the lightning casts tend to be much stronger with greater range. Furthermore, the unpredictability and suddenness of the attacks make it difficult for people to guard against it. Thus, this method became the primary choice for storm druids. As a great druid who specializes in summoning lightning, the current stormy weather causes her powers to soar. The temporary saint rank Crows gives up on her incantations and uses her will to guide the fall of the lightning. The moment she calls out the name of the divine art, 17 consecutive lightning comes striking down violently, forming a lightning barrier. Its target isn't the enemy but the knight who is blindly charging. 6 Circle Storm Druid Divine Art, summon lightning barrier, seal and hinder the movements of an enemy. In its primary form, 6 lightning rods are summoned. The amount will increase accordingly to the spellcaster's strength. The moment the barrier is touched, the lightning rods would explode. In a lightning storm, what you want isn't an umbrella but a lightning rod. Why? You would be struck if you carry a lightning rod instead? Fine, let me just say it directly. That lightning rod refers to the foolish soldiers who carry their spears to charge on a rainy day. Remember to hire spearmen with high wages and purchase insurance for them. Everyone has a part to play in caring for the spearmen. Please support the law which dictates compulsory insurance for spearmen. TZZZZZZZZZZZ. Under the augmentation from being a temporary saint, the original 6 rods of lightning increased to 17 rods, of which 15 of them served as barrier to seal Ren's movements. The remaining 2, which are the weakest 2 as well, strike on her head, warning the rascal through the running currents that she is on the edge of crossing into dangerous boundaries. However, even though our knights are the rare few who possess top-class magic pets who are able to communicate telepathically with their knights, Ren is one of the rare few who doesn't influence her pet positively. Rather, she caused her mount to correctly determine and execute the movements of a super rookie knight. TZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ Ah! After noticing the lightning barrier, the frigid nightmare Sava stops hurriedly. However, Ren, who has yet to react, chooses to charge on. Under the clash of the two wills, even though the furious charge had successfully come to a stop, the duo take a step further and crash into the lightning barrier, causing the lightning rods to explode. Lightning currents run through Ren and Sava's body, and gauging from the decibel of their screams of agony, they seem to be at least medium rare. However, the events that happen a second later prove that our efforts were not futile. Not too far away, a ball of green ink venom suddenly falls to the ground, corroding it. Without any sound, a 5-meter radius hollow is created on the spot. There are no blind angles to the 9-headed dragon who possesses 18 eyes. Even when his physical body is bound tightly, it is impossible to him to not notice our arrival and Ren's charge. Thus, he casually sends a dragon breath through the dragon head, which spits venom to deal with us. If Ren didn't stop due to the lightning barrier, under the precise calculation of the 9-headed dragon, she would collide straight into the ball of venom. Then, she would be corroded to the point that not a trace of her would remain. If it wasn't for Crow's timely reaction, it would be about time for me to consider what I should carve on the rascal's grave. This foolish princess actually dreams of charging towards a giant dragon just like the protagonists in night novels. However, it is a pity that she only met with windmills throughout her life. That is until the day she finally saw a semi-god 9-headed dragon. She could finally fulfill her wish to prove her courage. Then, since she charged towards a semi-god, how could she still have any then? Just like that, Ren.Ken.Mist, died in AD 1897, 14-year-old. Cause of death, heavily poisoned by night novels. However, I didn't have the leisure to discipline her right now. There are many troublesome things to deal with. After realizing that Ren has escaped from death, a look of pity appears on the face of the All-End Empire advisor Marcellus' face. A "why didn't she die" face of regret hangs on his face. This is such a pity. If only the charge were successful, you could have dealt fatal damage to the evil dragon. Fatal damage? A rookie knight whose total strength barely reaches gold rank against a semi-god Hydra? Even if she manages to land a square blow, it would probably just be disregarded. This kind of lousy excuse, which obviously was thought without using one's brain, and that incredibly fake look of worry, is completely insulting my intelligence as the one being lied to. However, there is no need for me to speculate his reason for being here. He is obviously here to kill us. The proof? This entire city is currently under the effect of great judgment. Previously, when he just appeared, he was still normal. However, the moment he cast bloodthirst on Ren, his body is dyed in red light, the color of a criminal. This is the verdict of the judgment spell on his attempted murder. Why did he go for Ren and not Roland? After tearing away my clothes, I was almost nude when I returned to the church in my ice armor. Afterwards, I naturally put on a male's knight armor, not to mention the full body ice armor concealing my face. Furthermore, the person under the heavy armor is obviously a male, so he couldn't have possibly inferred that I was the one. Besides, Marcellus' mission is to kill away the Shadow Princess of the Mist royalty. She is an Aurora Knight with the strength of a gold rank or so. In the earlier periods, Ren couldn't conceal her strength of not even being of bronze rank from true experts, so how could it be possible for her to become an Aurora Knight, which requires one to be of at least silver rank? From the very start, Marcellus thought that Ren is the Shadow Princess Roland. At this moment, Marcellus still thinks that he isn't exposed given his covert schemes and his esteemed position. To add on, he is a mage cloaked in a red mantle, not to mention that he trains in the way of blood magic, causing his entire body to be shrouded by a mist of blood, thus causing the red light from the judgment spell to be barely visible. Also, the debuffs which the Great Judgment sent toward him couldn't even break his defense magic. However, it is great that you are safe. He is still trying to defend his actions. However, I don't intend to reveal his intentions. On the other hand, I nod my head in agreement at his words. Indeed, just a little bit more. Princess Ren would be able to make a name for herself. It is really such a pity. That would have been a true legend. Carrying an ice helmet, I played the part of a foolish, brutish knight vividly. That accidentally leaked news verifies Marcellus' conjecture. He strokes his lower jaw in satisfaction, as though delighted over his intelligence and acting skills. At the same time, I communicate through the Lich's phylactery to pressure Rosemary on the intelligence and weakness of this advisor. After all, he is a semi-god and the strongest power we have in our hand is Kuros, who only has 10 minutes left as a fake saint. No matter what, facing him straight on doesn't seem like a wise plan. Even though he is said to be severely injured, a semi-god is still a semi-god. He would definitely be hard to deal with. Even in his death throes, he is more than sufficient to pull us down together with him. Weakness? How could someone like him have a weakness? Fine, fine, stop pulling my phylactery. I am thinking. He really doesn't have any weakness. Even when he is heavily injured, he is able to extract the fresh blood of others to recover from his wounds, forcefully maintaining his body's condition. His ability to survive is extremely strong. If one is unable to kill him, his revenge would prove to be fatal. Wait, did you say that he depends on sucking blood to maintain his ability to move? That means the blood in his body doesn't belong to him? After receiving an affirmative answer, a thought comes to my mind. Since there isn't any loss, let's just give it a try. Thus, I remove my helmet to reveal a bright smile unique to only pure holy knights. All and Empire Advisor Lord Ngrint, we have killed a sea folk commander on the way here and picked up a bottle. Some of them confess that it is a god equipment. Since you're knowledgeable, can you help us take a look at it? Not far away, the pale-faced Ren is rushing back on her horse. Marcelin retracts his gaze of a predator from her upon hearing my words and smiles. Not Ngrint, it is Marcelit. Do you muscle-brained knights know what a god equipment? Something seems to be off about it. Let me take a look. The ancient copper bottle smells deeply of history. Even though there isn't a ripple of magic on it, the brand new material shows that the concept of time is meaningless before it, and even more so, how extraordinary the bottle is for being able to transcend history. It is truly a treasure. It is a pity that the original god of the god equipment has fallen, causing the god power of this god equipment to dry out. Right now, its only remaining use is to serve as a toy with unique effects. Let me study it for a moment. When I am done with it, I will send you all generous rewards. From those twinkling eyes and the eerie ill-intentioned laughter, I could tell that we are already dead people in Marcelit's eyes. The generous rewards he spoke of probably means to allow us to die comfortably. Then, I shall thank Lord Mabier. I am lacking the money to get myself a wife. My old family's Xiaofeng has been waiting for me for many years. It is not Mabier. Forget it, anything that pleases you. Then, the Blood Mage focuses his full attention on the ancient bottle. The charm of a god equipment to a mage is indescribable through words. Even though it is already useless at this point, if he is able to dig out a secret or two of the gods, Marcelit's strength could still increase exponentially. This is even more so when the god equipment originates from an ancient sea god. The art which Marcelit trains in, blood magic, is an extension of water magic, thus making the god equipment even more attractive to him. When his efforts finally bear fruits, I smiled. So this is how it is. Let me try activating it. When the god equipment is activated, the blue god light twirls around the semi-god blood mage. Then, fresh blood spurts continuously from his body and shoots into the distance like a red arrow. Due to excessive blood loss, Marcelit, who was already severely injured, lies unconscious in the water. Sidon War's ocean bottle, the god equipment of the legendary ancient sea god. It is said that in ancient times, it could stir endless tsunamis. Sidon War is the husband of the water elemental goddess Aeolus, the one who forced this desperate situation upon us. Even though this ancient god equipment has lost a large portion of its strength due to the passing of the ancient god, it still retains a single ability. Sidon War's ocean bottle, after activation, it causes the user's blood to return back to its most basic and pure form. This is the result I got after identifying it through the system. Its description may sound a little confusing, but after using it twice, I have a rough idea of how it works. Actually, this god equipment doesn't hold much use. It is only capable of separating a mixture into individual components. For example, if you were to mix seawater and river water into a single bottle, under normal circumstances, it would be impossible to separate them. However, when this god equipment is activated, it would be separated into a bottle of river water and a bottle of seawater. After losing the support of the god power from a true god, it became the most useless god equipment in history. However, this history's most useless god equipment has contributed greatly to us. It has destroyed a semi-god. Marsalet's entire body is composed of fresh blood of others. Since blood magic is considered a divergence of water magic, then naturally blood would be considered as a type of fluid. In the end, under the effects of the god equipment, the foreign blood in his body returns back to where they belong, returning Marsalet back into his immobile form. Furthermore, under the rebound of the magic and his excessive loss of blood, his injuries are even more severe than the ones inflicted by the nine-headed dragon from before. Sometimes, the retributions on those wrongdoers come so fast and the expression of justice can be so simple. Sending a violent punch towards the paralyzed vile criminal who tried to murder us, I smile satisfactorily. Following which, I stare blankly at the bottle which fell into the water. In the surroundings of the bottle, the flood water scatters away. It seems that even this city of rain which was created by a forbidden spell infused with god power could be returned back to its original state under the effects of this god equipment. Didn't they say that due to the existence of the two goddesses of creation, the ancient era is a feminist society? It seems that the water elemental goddess Elos is a husband control freak. Of course, that is a joke. However, it shows that from a certain aspect, the god power of the ancient sea god Sidon War is able to suppress the water elemental goddess Elos. Somehow, I feel that the god equipment left by the ex-husband of the water elemental goddess is the key to releasing this country-level strategic forbidden spell city of rain. HMPH, ignoring how that fellow has turned against us, the Sidon War's ocean bottle which has lost its god power can only maintain a meter water vacuum. So how could it be sufficient to deal with an entire forbidden spell of the gods? However, it is indeed a convenient tool to use at this moment. I retrieve the bottle and keep it in my embrace. Under the effect of the god equipment, the surroundings clear to form a clean space. Even though I unexpectedly cleared away the unfortunate blood mage easily, there is still a massive problem before me. If we don't deal with him in the remaining 5 minutes, under the rage of the nine-headed dragon emperor, even our option of escaping is nullified. Hey, since we don't have sufficient strength, then let's just try my tricks. Harlois, can you help me contact Dragon Slayer Bastler? 1 TKOing a boss. Oh, Chapter 119, Unexpected Rewards. You picked up an old man? Why didn't you try asking whether he is able to forge pills, or whether he possesses several decades of internal strength and is currently looking for a successor? At the very least, you have to ask whether he has godly weapons or if he has a rich, beautiful and young daughter who he left behind. After defeating Marsalet, the first thing I did was to send Harlois out in her bat form along with the Sidon War's ocean bottle to shelter her from the rain so that she could become our air reconnaissance. Since Marsalet is able to find us, it is possible for the other assassins to track us down as well. However, even if it is the spies of the royal family following behind us, I do not think that they are able to avoid Harlois's detection. After all, in such a heavy rain and flood, even if a high-tier shadower is able to remain invisible, it is impossible for his physical body to disappear. If he is concealing himself in the water, there would probably be a bizarre giant hole appearing in the water. The same goes for the mage's invisibility spell. All kinds of concealing and transformation techniques are rendered significantly less effective in water. Disappearing under my sight? What is that? Your wet footprints are still there. Color concealment? I'm sorry, the dye on your body has already faded. Next time, remember to purchase high-class waterproof paint. That one using conceal magic. Water is already splashing on you. Do you intend to cosplay a water elemental? However, what is gratifying is that Harlois did not spot any other scouts. This means that there are probably none of them left. But when she reports that there is a white-bearded old man on a tree not too far away, I can't help but recall the classical lines in the night novels. Thus, I said those words on top right away. After all, in night novels, if one were to find a white-bearded old man out of the blue, half of the time, it is the start of the protagonist's road to achieving great heights. They would always turn out to be some elder, some god or some great expert. Such destiny. He even has an incredibly rich child who is interested in you. What? Darsos. Minon. This old man is Crow. Minon, the previous emperor of the All-End Empire as well as the brother of your cute junior. Why? Hurry up and pay respect to your father-in-law. Your tidbits for tomorrow are confiscated. If you don't shut up, I will turn you into a dog who salivates everywhere it goes. Or perhaps, I should turn all your little fish tidbits into dog biscuit. All of those would be expired. This threat, which is very likely to be carried out, causes Harlois to instantly fall silent. Even though I said such words, I am actually very delighted. Finding the previous emperor, Crow, is a big reward. Looks like Marsalit had originally intended to take away this previous emperor. As long as we are able to escape from Kajersi, just the news of this old emperor being alive would allow us to carry out many different kinds of schemes. This is really just like a night novel, dropping treasures upon killing the monster. For a semi-god to end like this, it could be considered a tragedy. I have already thrown the semi-god blood mage Emperor Marsalit to the knights following us to keep an eye on. Under the verification of the system, he doesn't possess even a single semi-god equipment. Also, the several powerful looking equipment on him aren't of epic tier. Other than those, the blood dragon head token he was carrying looks familiar. The blood dragon insignia of the royal family, the seal of authority of the emperor, although it represents the utmost authority of the All-End Empire, it is a useless tool in your hands. However, a certain emperor would definitely look forward to regaining it. Other than serving as an evidence, this token made of special metal contains many undiscovered secrets. While lamenting how poor the boss is, I turn my attention to the entrance of our escape route, which is firmly blocked by the nine-headed dragon not too far away. That should be our main goal at the moment. Darn it, of the entire stretch of the coast, why must he come to shore here? However, I know that this isn't a coincidence. Perhaps, my horrible luck is working its wonders again, or the overlapping of certain reasons resulted in this inevitability. A month ago, the All-End Empire had a large amount of garrison forces here along with the semi-god. However, due to those unlucky fellows posing a great threat to the sea folk, the nine-headed dragon emperor chose this location as his primary target. Although they are both semi-god, the nine-headed dragon who has evolved into a semi-god nine-headed dragon emperor isn't a being whom a human semi-god is capable of handling. Back then, the human semi-god was slayed in an instant, following which, the nine-headed dragon emperor went back and roamed about freely in the river. Now that he is required for the battle, he naturally chose this location to come to shore at. Yet, the moment he climbs up, Basler blocked his advance. Thus, after a series of inevitables, he blocks our path like a mountain, leaving us helpless and frustrated. That battle is still being fought intensely and Basler still holds the upper hand. All kinds of dragon slaying and dragon sealing godly weapons appear, slicing the heads of the immobile nine-headed dragon emperor, spraying blood all over his head. However, the problem is this nine-headed snake is known for its resilient life force and its regenerative capabilities. It is said that even with a single head left, the nine-headed snake is able to fully recover within 3 days. If its body is torn into two, it is able to split into two smaller individuals. An existence at the level of the nine-headed dragon emperor is able to regenerate indefinitely when in contact with water. It is difficult for him to die even if he is willing to. Basler is a heroic spirit who doesn't know the meaning of fatigue. He intends to continuously destroy the enemy's dragon heads and drain it of its regenerative abilities to fight an attrition fight. He does have the time to spare and ability to drag the battle on, but we don't. I know that once the Great Judgment ends, the nine-headed dragon would immediately flip the tables around. At that point, we would be goners. There is no difference from charging to the Hydra from committing suicide. However, is there no solution for us to achieve a victory without having to fight the Hydra face on? After squeezing my brain juice dry, I found a very unorthodox solution to the problem. Dragon Slayer Basler, I am the god envoy of the god of law. The caster of the forbidden spell is someone on our side. I have to tell you an unfortunate news. The duration of the forbidden spell is coming to an end and in 5 minutes, the chains will disappear. If I'm not wrong, the nine-headed dragon emperor will regenerate and the battle would go back to a standstill. Very quickly, this entire city will fall and the sea folk will all come to shore. You probably don't have much time left to squander on it. The bat form Harlois flies to a location not too far away from Basler. Under my coercion, she fulfills the basic role of a magic pet, Transmission of messages. I have a plan here, though it is an obvious breaking of the rules, so it would depend on your decision. If you are willing to carry it out, nod your head. The plan goes like this. We will help you store that dumb snake for a short period of time, during which, you will. After explaining the plan, Bastler hesitates for a moment. However, he is unwilling to let go of the prey before him. Thus, he nods his fierce furiously, agreeing to my plan. The next moment, with both of his hands raised up, he gathers lightning on his hands. After which, the dragon spear behind him expands to the size of a small boat. Then, enchanting lightning on it, it turns into an indestructible lightning spear. Then, summoning with his full strength, the clouds scatter and a sliver of moonlight falls. As a heroic spirit of the goddess of moonlight, Bastler is only able to exert his full strength under the moonlight. A pale white energy is infused on top of the lightning spear. The layer of silver light on the spear tip may seem inconspicuous, but it is the power granted from a true god. After enchanting moonlight blade on the spear and obtaining the blessing of the goddess of hunting, the might of the lightning spear surges. Ain spear of destruction. The nine-headed dragon struggles furiously, creating gigantic waves from the river water. At the moment, waves after waves of tsunamis billows as flashes of lightning appears here and there. It really looks like the sight of the end of the world. However, no matter how much the Hydra struggles, the anti-dragon enchantments which Bastler keeps recasting on the chains leaves him unable to move in the least. Even when his roar fills the heavens and shakes the ground, that seemingly slow but fast dragon-slaying spear strikes the nine-headed dragon brutally. I curse you, I curse that you will never obtain redemption and release, that you will always be plagued with nightmares of your loved ones, that you will never sleep soundly. Darn you, Dragon Slayer! Under the furious roars and curse of the Dragon Emperor, two of his dragon heads immediately severs and a massive amount of venomous green blood spurts out, turning the surrounding water body into a lethal venom that corrodes one's body and soul. Hey, your screams of agony and curses would become my lullaby at night. Following which, without even looking at the results of his attack, Bastler flows towards us. On the other hand, I prompt Arabella to charge forward to replace the position of the heroic spirit. Sigh, 19 seconds is sufficient for it to regrow its dragon head. This nine-headed dragon is really difficult to deal with. The moment I step into the nine-headed dragon's area of vigilance, lightning, flames, venom and ice all come shooting towards me. Even as the nine-headed dragon screams agonizingly in pain and two of its dragon heads are still spurting venomous blood as he curses the dragon slayer to meet with misfortune, the other 7 heads had already regained their combat ability. This is the benefit from possessing multiple heads. Should I go and modify our boss when I return? The times are changing and a 3-headed Cerberus seems to be outdated. 12 heads shouldn't be too much for a hellhound. However, it is a pity that Abbas is in his rebellious phase and probably won't agree to my modifications. The last time, not only did he reject the beloved nickname I came up for him, he even declared that even if the world ends, I won't let you modify me ever again. However, the upgrades I did for him the last time was obviously great. HMPH, he even forced me to cancel the automated function to crow at 6 in the morning every day. As a captain, it is important for him to supervise his subordinates to go for morning trainings punctually. Have you never heard of the saying dancing with the chickens? You actually back down after hearing someone call you demonic spatial rooster? Don't I also suffer from being labeled as having a screw loose by others as well? Useless. Right. Should I implement some wheels on him? It seems that Transformers is quite popular nowadays. TL, dancing with the chickens, greater than originally. It is referring to people who train in swordsmanship early in the morning. Then, it became used to refer to people who are motivated to improve themselves for a good cause. For destructive dragon breath is already right before me, yet I am still thinking about other matters. This isn't because I am belittling my opponent. The 9-headed dragon emperor who has undergone countless battlefields is experienced, so the locations he chose for his dragon breaths are not bad. The 4 dragon breaths strikes accurately from my front, back, left and right simultaneously and intersects towards me. If nothing goes wrong, I would have died no matter how I choose to dodge it. However, since I didn't die, something still went wrong. The charging ice warhorse suddenly disappears and turns into the young snow woman, who then sits on my shoulder. Golden wings sprout from my back, and with a leap, I turn the momentum into a driving force upwards. In my war angel form, I soar into the skies. As a war angel, my race talent consists of controlling the sacred inferno of order. At this moment, the sacred inferno has boils countless falling raindrops. The rain doesn't really affect me much. However, I don't dare to stop and continue to soar upwards so as to dodge the nine-headed dragon's consecutive attacks in advance. My decision is proven to be the right one. A few seconds later, the position where I was previously at is overlaid by storm and a sudden tsunami. This is one of the basic knowledge in a top-tier battle. To deal with an agile opponent who is adept at concealment and hard to hit, the easiest is to not get tangled up with him and instead, use large AO spells to destroy him and wherever he could possibly hide. If Ren was here, she would have probably died even if she possesses my skills. Outstanding battle experience is a requirement to predict the enemy's moves in advance. While turning around in midair to dodge all kinds of breaths, ice and ice magic attacks on the nine-headed dragon. Yes, ice magic. Furthermore, they are bronze rank magic spells which are below 3 circles, ice magic which the nine-headed dragon is able to disregard. Of course, with my temporary silver rank, I am capable of using 5-circle magic spells as well. However, as I am not willing to waste my skill points on them, I don't know a single silver rank, 4-circle, 5-circle, magic spell. Since the quality is insufficient, I choose to make it up with my quantity. The ice residue which I casually create can also be used to create a man-made hail when falling down from the sky. However, what stands below the hail isn't some weak windscreen of a car or some tearful car owners who are regretting their choice to not get insurance. That water magic of the ancient sea monster below is not inferior in any ways to a top-class water mage. Water magic and ice magic is connected in many minute ways. Not to mention, the nine-headed dragon's ice dragon head specializes in rapid freezing magic. That little ice residues of mine pales too much in comparison. However, the ice dragon head simply disregards my attacks and a scornful look appears on his face. However, the main body of the nine-headed dragon meets with a little trouble. His body permeates a crystal blue color as a thin layer of ice starts to form on the dragon's body. He has been afflicted with a frozen status. His skin really thick. Even though the system never said that it is impossible to resist the frozen air, to think he resisted more than half of its effect for it to take effect only now. I never do meaningless tasks. From the very start, the seemingly meaningless attack is actually an attempt to propagate the effects of frozen air. Frozen air, a kind of deadly cold air that is without sound or presence. It can be enchanted onto one's physical body and weapon, as well as paired together with ice magic as an attack. Those who are touched by the frozen air will have all movements slowed by 1% and suffer 1 point of frost damage per second. This debuff can be stacked. If the target's movement speed is reduced by more than 20%, a frozen effect will be inflicted. Many negative statuses will be inflicted, such as the freezing of one's thought. If the target's movement speed is reduced by more than 50%, then there is a chance that the target might die at any moment due to massive loss of heat. The strength of this ability isn't exceptionally strong, but it has the advantage of that no living things can be completely immune to it. Of course, I wouldn't dream to trying to freeze this terminal life form, a nine-headed dragon, to death. However, the disgusting negative effects of slowed thinking process and reaction speed would help me in accomplishing the dangerous mission of drawing his aggression. On the other side, they have already reached the final stages of it as well. Are you willing to follow by the will of the God of Law and fight for law and justice? Croz's voice trembles with agitation as he conducts the job change ritual for the semi-god heroic spirit. This isn't something an ordinary archbishop could meet with. Yes, from the very start, my goal is clear. Since the only being on our side who could pose a threat to the nine-headed dragon is Bastler, then pulling up Bastler's strength would be the most ideal decision at the moment. As long as we add a halo of a law job on top of him, his power rank would be pulled up a level by the Great Judgment and the rank higher than a semi-god is. Alright, it is impossible for him to attain the strength of a true god. However, he would still gain the strength to easily subdue the nine-headed dragon. However, I estimate his overwhelming power will cause the Great Judgment to end earlier. Also, The strength he would possess is most probably not something his body of a heroic spirit would be able to withstand. In the best possible scenario, he would go down after the Hydra with a single blow. However, Bastler is already a dead person, so how could he be bothered over this? What he is worried about is whether he is able to get the dragon down with him in that single blow. At this moment, even with the assistance of the semi-god equipment scattered page, procedures still have to be followed to grant Bastler a law job. Crows has to finish chanting the long prayer. Furthermore, the ritual is sacred, so they are unable to move in the midst of it. The nine-headed dragon isn't a fool either. The Ice Master in the sky who, astonishingly, was able to freeze him is obviously stalling for time. While he doesn't know what the Dragon Slayer is doing, it definitely isn't a good thing for him. Thus, he lifts all 9 of his heads without hesitation and starts charging up his dragon breath on every single one of his heads. If he were to release it, not mentioning how Crows and the others would die for certain, the entire pair would disappear from existence. No matter what the situation is, no matter what schemes they are up to, first shoot a blast at them before thinking about it. I like that thought process, because I am the same as well. Harl always, Plan C. Give him a big one. Chapter 120, Decisive Battle. 1. The storm didn't seem like it would end anytime soon. The slaughter and screams of agony in the distance seems to be dying down. In the moment when the sea folk are about to successfully claim ownership of their new capital, our journey to escape is also nearing its end. The 9-headed dragon before us opens his mouth and the remaining 7 dragon heads vomit 7 colored dragon's blood. At the same time, different types of magic are gathered together and under the careful control of the 9-headed dragon, the 7 dragon breaths form a colorful floating ball. The result is a lethal ball of elements. This is the specialty of multi-headed dragons. When multiple elemental magics are combined into one body and the 7-colored ball of light becomes pure, a light that can destroy everything will be born. That is the way of the battle for a top-tier magic beast. Abandoning all of the useless flowery tricks and instead, try their best to strengthen their physical body and raise talent. From the looks of it, the dragon breath which combines multiple attributes will eventually become an attribute-less shockwave. Given the strength of the 9-headed dragon, even though he is without 2 heads at the moment, the might of this attack can rival even that of forbidden spells. A powerful physical body and a simple, yet powerful, raise talent attack. This is the basis for top-tier beings, like giant dragons, in suppressing everything else. When fighting with such unreasonable beings, one's strength is required to do the talking. From the look of those ripples of magic, if he were to successfully cast it, forget about the others, even the entire pier will be eradicated. HMPH, did you think that I would allow you to do as you please? Harl always, Plan C. Give him a big one. Neong Neong, I am afraid that this concubine is unable to do so. TL, Neong Neong, greater than how concubines in China address the queen. What? Reporting to the queen, this concubine would like to blast a big one as well, but do you think that it takes no time to prepare? I need at least 5 minutes. Can't you spare some thoughts for the rescue troops who need to arrive late? How can rescue troops arrive at the crucial period for a hero? So do it yourself. Don't hold expectations for supporting roles like us, I believe in you. Listening to her retort, which has the flavor of modern times, I decided to never say such messy stuff to the darned cat anymore. On the other hand, I am really put into a helpless position. I could understand the lack of time for Harlois to prepare sufficiently. However, if this dragon breath were to really shoot out, then I wouldn't need any more plans because nothing would be left. Darn it. Giant fellow, look at this. Taking a deep breath, I don't intend to charge at the Hydra. I fly towards the stone cliff in the opposite direction from Crows and the rest. I won't need wings for what I'm about to do. Sinful devil god. Folding in my wings, the fatigue from releasing the war angel form embraces me. However, I didn't have the time to complain about it. Light of chaos shrouds me and turns me into another form. Sinful devil god. The angle of view increases by quite a bit due to the enlargement of my physical body. My breathing carries along the smell of sulfur. That is the mark of a demon. My wet and smooth skin assume a layer of ugly, light blue lava. Along with the rhythm of my breathing, my bizarre magic tattoos start to shine, reminiscent to the elemental life forms. The chaos bloodline causes the blue lightning in my veins to explode, before pouring out from the magic tattoos. The emitted power can make the rain in the air evaporate. Lightning shines in both of my eyes. When my form has been fixed, it looks as though a devil god has descended onto the mortal world. I don't like this transformation at all. Other than the fact that the power of chaos brings about trouble just from its bad reputation, this form, which looks like the boss of the villainous faction, is really ugly. It reminds me of my dark history back when I was the Lich, when I scared myself just looking into the mirror in the middle of the night. However, at this moment, I need this ugly transformation. Although this form is hideous, the strength it provides me isn't at all cozy. The spirits of the snow, the snowstorms of the extreme lands, listen to my command. If the War Angel form is a form which allows me to move at great speed, making it suited for close combat battle, then the sinful devil god form would be one that boosts my control over magic, my will, intelligence, and several attributes and stats that are related to magic, making it a typical magic-based transformation. Under my will, the old era of decay and the end of the terminal will arrive. The long incantation carries along with it the ripples of a destructive magic. The spirits of the snow are singing along in the air. The top-tier ice forbidden spell, Ician, is about to descend on the battlefield. It's different from Margaret's pirated version. While the copied Ician probably doesn't even hold a third of the original's strength, I, as the original creator of the forbidden spell, am able to raise its power to 200%. The concept behind this forbidden spell is simple. Crystallizing the purest power of ice and snow, and after compressing it multiple times, blast it outwards. This is no different from the concept of a fireball. However, Harlois once made an evaluation on it. Due to its simplicity, it is pure and suits the very nature of ice and snow, thus making it powerful. Semi-god equipment, the Dark God's breath of death, soul conversion. Siphon the souls of the dead and convert it into pure power of death. The power of death passes through me and converts into the purest ice mana. Should I be thankful for the great slaughter that Carlohan carried out in his years of accumulation? Countless souls have created a massive mana vault in this semi-god equipment, and this happens to be what I lack the most at this moment. The winter's hibernation is destruction as well as rebirth. With me at the very core, while mana frenziedly surges out from the raised black staff, and as the chanting grew louder, the blue magic inscriptions that represent ice and snow extend on the ground while the snow spirits sing in chorus. Even before the spell is released, the entire cliff turns into a land of frost. The rainwater falling from the sky freezes into snow. The humid and warm summer wind blowing over becomes a bone-chilling storm of the extreme lands. Even more so, due to the rapid fall in temperature, a thin layer of ice starts to form over the flood, and so the endless flood seems to have met its nemesis for the first time. In the end, the two newly regenerated dragon heads raise themselves upwards and stare fixedly at me, their giant eyes about the size of an adult man emitting a furious red light. That is truly a bear intent to kill. In the short distance between us, the snow is insufficient to block his sight. He is measuring whether my magic could threaten him. In the mind of the nine-headed dragon, as long as he is able to destroy the dragon slayer and the hateful chains in one blow, what does getting struck by a forbidden spell count as? Anyway, it isn't the first time the Hydra has been struck by a forbidden spell. Since it's resilient and wouldn't die from it, he would fully regenerate in just a few days. However, taking just one look, he knows that this is a situation unlike any he has undergone. His regeneration ability is a race talent as well as an extension of his water magic. Fyros is confident that as long as there's water, he would not die. However, what if his supply of water were to be stopped? Water mages often cultivate ice magic to strengthen their own magic's destructive power and adaptability. However, this doesn't mean that these two types of magic don't contradict one another. On the other hand, the most hated opponents of pure water mages are ice mages. Water magic often presents itself in the form of water arrows and giant waves. Basically, it is the control over the shape and use of fluid. Thus, it has two nemeses: the high temperature fire magic, which evaporates fluid, and ice magic, which freezes water into a solid form. Regardless of whether the water is evaporated or frozen, when it is no longer in its fluid form, it doesn't fulfill the concept of water, thus destroying the mage's basic ability to control it. Nine-headed dragon Fyros is contemplating, but the more he thinks about it, the more he feels that something is amiss with the situation. The magic before him is obviously an ice magic forbidden spell. From the looks of the natural phenomenon and the resonance with the elemental spirits, it is obviously an extremely powerful forbidden spell. Although there is no magic ripple coming from the caster before him, bronze rank magic means nothing in his eyes. The black stick is releasing an unlimited amount of magic. Furthermore, the ice mage who just froze him has proven his extraordinary talent in ice magic. If this forbidden magic were to successfully freeze him, enjoying his life in an ice cube that would never melt, his regeneration abilities wouldn't be useful under such circumstances. A hydra who went into a refrigerator and forgot to come out? We can still earn a bit of money from selling the tickets to this exhibit. This joke isn't funny to him at all. If Roland were to be allowed to go a step further and freeze all the river water, rainwater, and his bodily fluids, his regeneration abilities would be annulled. It's quite possible for him to freeze into an ice cube and die upon breaking into ice fragments. Usually, the nine-headed Emperor Fires doesn't think anything of the forbidden spells of humans. However, at this moment, he didn't have the confidence to face it head-on. Beneath the feet of the mage, the frozen earth cleaves apart and the boundary between illusion and reality disintegrates. A large hole opens, after which, a giant, black skeletal hand reaches out from the hole, its claws stabbing into the firm ground. Every single finger of it is as though the size of a grown man, and this is only the beginning. The true nightmare is returning back to the surface. As that pitch-black giant skeleton head returns to the mortal world from the underworld and the crowned skeleton head releases a peculiar caw-caw laughter, all life that sets its gaze upon it instinctively screams, as though they have caught sight of the Grim Reaper who reaps all souls. We will bring about equal end and death to all life. The incantation continues on. On top of the laughing skeleton king's head, the mage who is standing on the ice crown continues to chant as the ice crystal crown becomes his throne. The mountains have already been converted into snowlands. On top of the snow, the king of ice laughs maniacally. Just his very existence is sufficient to bring termination to all life forms. On top of the cliff, the endless ice has started to freeze the flood. Even the air is starting to freeze. Upon the descent of the king of eternal night, all life will face its end. Even though the ice has yet to creep onto the nine-headed dragon, fear appears in its blood-red eyes. Under the gaze of the skeleton king, the nine-headed dragon Phyros has never felt so close to death. Even though his seven-colored dragon breath is in the midst of gathering, his instinctive fear of death causes the ancient, vile beast to shiver uncontrollably. This isn't determined by the difference in strength, but the fear that results from the hierarchy of the food chain. The one before him is the Black Skeleton King, the hunter of all lives. The nine-headed dragon understands that the Skeleton King before him, who is taller than him, is just an illusion, that it's just a divine apparition similar to a soul world upon releasing the forbidden spell. Although this is the unique privilege of experts who had once approached the realm of true gods and are rarities in this era, it all means nothing to him, who is ancient himself. However, the divine apparition that is projected is that person, that God's true form. He has seen before the divine apparition of the Queen of Storms, the furious projection of the God who creates storms that can destroy cities. Yet, her might is lacking too far behind this black skeleton. The only one who can compare to it would probably be the ancient death god Ayor's apparition. Ayor, god of death. That same skeletal body and a black semi-god staff. Could he really be that person from the legends? I have heard of rumors that he has appeared in the underground world and destroyed a demon count. Is it possible that it is the legendary, the ultimate forbidden spell, one which destroyed countless elf kingdoms, Ician? Under my will, the Aeon of Frost will return back to the mortal world and the world belonging to the dead will once again. At this point, the forbidden spell cannot be stopped at one's whim anymore. Even if the spellcaster stops the incantation, the snow spirits in midair will still continue the incantation. At this moment, the bizarre choral incantation echoes throughout the entire battlefield. Even though this is the language of a foreign world, everyone can comprehend the true meaning behind this bizarre language. It isn't like some malevolent curse. Rather, it sounds just like a historian recounting the history he has compiled. There is a possibility that the spellcaster is illustrating the future which he thinks would happen, when the Ician descends and all life freezes. The gods and the living beings will either die or go into a long slumber. Then, The undead who do not fear the cold will become the conquerors of the new era. Although this is just a simple description, it carries with it endless death and despair. This is Emperor Young I's doomsday poem, Ician. It's a kind of inconceivable distortion, but based on national history, it's definitely a plausible doomsday that could happen in the future. In order to bring this doomsday to the living, the Emperor Young I of back then created history's most dangerous and lunatic forbidden spell. The most ludicrous part about it is that he succeeded. From the day this forbidden spell was created, Ician was fated to become the nightmare of all living beings. Upon realizing that his opponent could be that person, Pyrrhus feels despair. When he was at his pinnacle, even a second-tier god would have to avoid his path. His army had once hunted countless existences of his level and was well known in the circle of top-tier magic beasts. His memory of him is very distinct. It would be too foolish of him to be unable to recognize him when the incantation has gotten to such a point. Emperor Young I. The terrified nine-headed dragon emperor shouts that forbidden name and his roar tremors the entire village. Countless eyes dart over and the entire world shakes in fear. At this moment, Pyrrhus doesn't doubt in the least that this forbidden spell would take his life. If the complete Ician were to be released, the one who should be worried on whether an entire corpse would be left behind is the city, not himself. In reality, it would be like that too. If the complete version of Ician were to be released, the effects of the City of Rain could be disregarded. Within a century, this land would become an extreme land of only ice and nothing else. At the final countdown of the seven-colored dragon breath, knowing his nemesis who views slaughtering dragons as his ultimate goal is before him, he chooses not to exact vengeance when his life is ticking away before him. Ah! Kaka! The two newly regenerated dragon heads bite away the other 6 dragon heads. The pitiful terminal life form 9-headed dragon emperor becomes a 3-headed snake. Losing 6 of the energy source, the remaining head is finally able to freely control the rampaging ball of dragon breath. Thus, he releases the dragon breath with his full strength towards Emperor Young I without any hesitation. At this moment, I may look impressive, but in reality, I am already on the verge of tears. I am just a bronze rank rookie ice mage and the entire mana that my body contains is not even sufficient to put together a hailstorm. Ician or whatever, it's just a faraway dream for me. However, just like how I recomprehended Bladestorm, given how I am aware of the theory behind it, recomprehending the Ician that I have created isn't a difficult task. However, without the foundations to support it, there is no way I would be able to release it. Ding! Congratulations for comprehending the semi-god tier destructive forbidden spell Ician. System dip. What? You want further explanations? Since you can't possibly execute it, why bother wasting my saliva? Besides, if you were to really release it, remember to buy a coffin beforehand. What? You think that you should use this rare luck to buy a lottery ticket? Are you dumb? How can the dead buy lottery tickets? Right, you can try to bet on soccer and I can earn some money meanwhile. It is a definite win as long as I stand on the side opposite to you. As usual, I ignore the retort of the noisy system. At this moment, in order to distract the 9-headed dragon who is disregarding me, I intend to take out Ician to scare him, even using the mana stored in Dark God's Breath of Death just for it. However, the moment it speaks, I know that the situation is dire. I have gone too far again. Darn it. Stop.